This is The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
They're running a strange program, y'all.
Now, here's Frank Morano.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the midst of a day-long celebration of 6 decades of life to a broadcasting legend, a gentleman who I have known for about a quarter century, and who had more than that, actually, and who shockingly turned 60 today. Now, it's hard to believe that he's 60 for me, because on the one hand, I feel like he's been around forever. It's difficult for me to picture any moment in particularly New York City politics or journalism that doesn't involve Dominic Carter. But on the other hand, it's hard for me to believe that he turned 60 because he still looks the same now as when he did 25 years ago. And I don't know, you picture a 60-year-old, you picture somebody that's a little older. But today is indeed the birthday of the one and only Dominic Carter. Dominic, happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you, buddy. It's nice to be with you, superstar Morano, Mr. 4-4. And folks, I call him around the country 4-4. It was what, Talkers Magazine?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
He's the 44th most popular, most powerful radio talk show host in the entire country. So nice to always be with you. And thank you for the kind birthday wishes, Frank. Bottom line is, man, you're the man. And if the world had more people like you, we wouldn't have the problems that we have, and we certainly wouldn't have the racial problems that we have.
I appreciate that, Dominic. You're very kind, and hope all your birthday wishes come true, whatever it is today. But, you know, it's funny. I was thinking about you as I read this article in Vox yesterday, because when you were doing your thing on a local news channel in New York City, you were kind of the premier anchor. And when you were anchoring that show, that was the one show that you knew everybody in the political community was watching. I think I first appeared with you on that show about 2006, 2007. And what would happen when you'd go on that show is immediately your phone would just explode of people responding to whatever it is that you said. And that was the one place. It was almost like for what the Tonight Show was for comedians back in the 60s and 70s. It was the one place that could instantly make you a star, at least on a local level. And the reason I was thinking about that today is this article in Vox by Constance Grady asks the question, is anybody watching the same TV shows anymore? There have been a lot of television shows over the last 25, 30 years where you knew that when you went to work the next day, Seinfeld comes to mind, The Sopranos comes to mind, MASH comes to mind, that everyone at the office was going to have seen the same show. These days, while there's apparently a lot of great shows out there, the Venn diagram of people watching the same shows is all over the place. And look, obviously, it's great that we have a lot of consumer options now and people can watch whatever they want. But I'm curious, what do you think, if anything, this means for the culture, that we don't have many common frames of reference? I can't go to Matt Blaze or Elias and say, hey, did you see what happened on blank last night, the way I could have to someone 20 years ago?
Your assessment is 1,000% dead on. I think it's bad for the country, or at least bad for all of us. I guess it's a two-sided coin. Opportunity and more programs is always a good thing, more stations. But, the sad part, Frank, to me, it's a reflection of the industry, and a dying industry, at least when it comes to television news, and budget cuts. Because nowadays, just for television news, for argument's sake, they're putting people on network news with very little ability. Why? Because of they can they can pay them the fewer dollars in terms of what they used to do in the past. So I'm not knocking anybody. You mentioned me and my last job at New York One, right? So when I left New York One, there were 1 million people looking to take over as host of the program, right?
Yeah.
And so the person they settled on, he's a good man, a good person. And
friend of mine, by the way. I got nothing against him. But
yeah, I don't mean this to sound negative, but on the talent skill level,
well, it is. You know what it is? It's a show that doesn't have the same impact that it did 25 or 30 years ago. And the other thing that really occurred to me when thinking about that is I remember 30 years ago, particularly in the aftermath of the first World Trade Center bombing, which was also a year that saw the asbestos in schools. It was the year that saw a very tough mayoral race between David Dinkins and Rudy Giuliani. It was less than a year removed from the Crown Heights riots. I had no idea that you were so young at the time that you were doing all that stuff. I mean, you had a lot of gravitas for such a young guy.
I'm going to admit something for the very first time, and I thought I would never admit this. So when I started out, I was straight out of grad school. Actually, wait, let me rewind. So I had completed college in only 3 years, right? Not because I'm smart, but because I didn't want to go back to the housing projects in New York City. That's why. So I stayed up in Cortland, New York, small rural community, every summer because I did not want to go back to the projects. It really is that simple. So in the course of taking classes every summer, I was able to graduate a year early. And so when I was offered my first job in radio as a breaking news reporter, and Frank, they told me point blank, they said I did an internship there, Percy Sutton, who was a legend in the New York area. And they said, we like you, we love you, we're willing to give this a shot, but we're going to tell you if it doesn't work out, we're going to drop you like a hot plate. As simple as that. And I said, let's go for it. And so, and I've never looked back, but here's what I want to admit, because I feel bad about this. They're no longer in business, but New York Newsday, which was a newspaper, Newsday is in business for
right,
the
my
Long
wife
Island.
works there part-time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, but New York Newsday, they were trying to branch out into New York City. And at the time, I was assigned to cover the Jesse Jackson presidential campaign in '88. And they came out and did a big profile of me. I'm talking like a 6-page or 5-page profile. And Frank, I'm not proud of this, but I was only like I think 20 or 21, something like that. And so I lied to Newsday. Let's say I embellished the truth. Let's put it that way. And I said that I was 27. When that wasn't true. I was only 21 years old, but I was afraid that if I told my real age, that the people that listened to the radio station would not take me seriously. And so that was one little fib, just one, that I told. And so maybe that's why you say I don't look as old as I actually am.
I see. All right.
So I fibbed a little bit. I said I was 27 when I was in the article, and the Courtney, who you referenced just last night, my grown daughter, who's now married with her own family, she was only an infant at the time, and so they put her in the profile. It was a big profile on me. And so I don't know what it was, Frank. I think the stars aligned for me because going back to then, it was like, I'm not going to say I was anointed, but it was like they said, this guy is special.
You know, and then I'm going to let you go and enjoy your birthday and maybe even get some rest or something, because heaven knows you're entitled to it.
What rest? You and I don't get rest. What's that? And neither does John Cassimatini.
Oh, that's
he
for
doesn't
sure.
Get any rest.
That's for sure. But what I was going to say is having that sort of impact, right, in terms of journalism, interviewing mayors and presidents of not only this country but foreign countries, interviewing archbishops and popes, and being kind of the face of New York journalism at a time when there was so much going on at such a young age, I have to think that does something to your head. Now, I've heard guys like Orson Welles, William Shatner, to some extent, talk about what it was like at a relatively young age to achieve a large degree of fame that they hadn't had before, and especially in the case of Orson Welles, a large degree of influence. What was that like for you at 30 years old, 31 years old, being toe-to-toe with presidents, prime ministers, kings, mayors, and, kind of being the face of some very big news stories for a huge audience, not just in New York, but really nationally?
It's one of the worst feelings in the world. And here's why. Because you're in competition with yourself. And it's not a good fit. You know that the political reporters at the owned and operated stations, that they're your competition, right? But this is the honest to God truth, Frank. I had dominated the market so much where they weren't my competition, and they were complaining that I got every single story, right? The people that are still around were complaining that I got every single story. But it's almost like, this is the honest truth. It's almost two things. One, when you're caught up in the moment, you don't have time to smell the roses. It's on to the next big story. It's on to the next big one. So, for example, the Hillary Clinton debate. I'm up in Rochester, New York, doing that debate. I'm on the aircraft flying home with the team of producers that was assigned to handle it. And they say to me, literally, they say to me, Hevesy, who was the state comptroller at the time, who went on to prison.
He was the city controller at that time, right?
City controller, yeah. Excuse me. And they said, Hevesy's going to sit down with you. And everybody wanted this interview. So the good news is that when you're at that level, they all come to you. But the bad news is that you've got to deliver and deliver all the time. So it's like Janet Jackson's song, What Have You Done For Me Lately? That's what it's like. So you can deliver Hillary Clinton today. You can deliver Caroline Kennedy the next month, which is what I did. But management is looking at you at all times. You have got to deliver. We pay you because it really is a business relationship, right? Obviously, we're not going to get into money, but we pay you to deliver. When we bring you in, we're sending in our big gun, and we expect for you to deliver. And it is a horrible feeling, Frank, the panic of I've got to find a way to deliver. And you do that for years. And so that's actually what happened. And I'm going to be honest with you, my friend, that's sort of the way I feel now, right? In my new role, right? The 3 p.m. show that I'm doing, the midnight show. It's about content, but it's about the ratings. And I've got to deliver. What have you done for me lately? That's what every day is for me. Nobody wants to hear you're tired. Nobody wants to hear your personal problems because nobody cares. You better put on a quality, informative show for the public, and those numbers have got to be there. What have you done for me lately? That is my life.
Well, we've been very fortunate to be the beneficiary on this show and in this audience of what you're doing for us lately. And all the accolades that you're going to be receiving today are well deserved. I see there's a full-page ad in the New York Post, richly deserved. I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow, my friend. Happy birthday.
Hey, man, I'm going to say to you what I say to one of our colleagues, Curtis Lewer. I love you, man. You're a good guy, Morano. And you're delivering for the country in your time slot, and you're just a quality person. And you don't come in with this ego like I'm a star. You are a superstar, but that's not who you are privately. Well, so it's a great honor to work with you, to work with Blaze, to work with Elias, to work with Tony, the entire team.
Well, very kind, Dominic. And if there's one thing that can keep any of us humble, it's just getting a glance at the Facebook group where the critics of all of us will let us know immediately what we're doing wrong. So,
Frank, I don't pay attention to your haters page anymore because half of those people, I'm not going to say they don't know what they're talking about, but they don't know what they're talking about. And
and go, my friend.
and you know, some of them are haters, and I don't know how you do it because I mean, they just you know what, Frank? I know you got to go, but I want somebody to explain this to me on social media. You're sitting at home in the comfort of your home, and you think you have a right to say anything you want to a public media person. No, you don't. And I'm not going to tolerate it. And if you say something that's foul, it's called block immediately. That's just the way I feel, Frank. I'm sorry. It is what it is.
And on the plus side, I'm just glad they're all listening. Dominic, happy birthday. I've got a Diet Dr. Pepper with your name on it when you come in later.
Fantastic, my friend. Regards to you, Frank. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Dominic Carter. And as an added benefit, Dominic has agreed to play DJ for a portion of this show. So throughout the program, we're going to have some Dominic Carter birthday jams that he has carefully curated and hand-selected that have some special meaning to him at some point or another. Now, if you want to comment, by the way, on anything we're talking about, you can give me a call at 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. I did think this article in Vox was pretty interesting about, is anybody watching the same TV shows anymore? And it's funny, this article, I read it at just the right time because not only did I have the nexus of realizing the influence that Dominic had at such a young age, but I was just talking with a friend of mine, and I've brought this up with you before, about how there is no more collective viewing experiences. It's really just the Super Bowl. It used to be everything. It used to be, you knew on Sunday night at 9 p.m., you couldn't bother anybody because they were watching The Sopranos. It used to be Thursday nights at 9 p.m., you couldn't bother anybody because they were watching Seinfeld. Going back 15 or 20 years, it was the same thing with the Academy Awards. It's no longer that way anymore. The last thing that I really think has sort of that collective engagement is probably the Super Bowl. That's really the only thing that I think is universally watched. I don't think it's the case with the presidential debates. I don't think it's the case with the State of the Union. Maybe if there's a breaking news incident, and, you know, especially if there's something catastrophic, then maybe you'll see some of that. But by and large, those days of collective viewership are over. I just shared that article on my Facebook page. If you want to read it, facebook.com/Morano fan. That's facebook.com/Morano fan. And look, in part, it's because there's 9 million different channels and streaming outlets. In part, it's just, and look, you could say this of radio as well. My favorite radio shows, and we're going to talk with one guy who was host of one of my favorite radio shows for a long time. He's coming up in 5 minutes. My favorite radio shows, I would plan my day or my evening around making sure I was near a radio while that show was going on. I wanted to make sure if I was going to be out, I had my little portable radio with me and I could listen. Now, I feel absolutely no urgency to catch a show live. None. You know why? Because if I miss it, I can listen to the show whenever I want. If I don't get to hear it live from 7 to 8 p.m., I just hear it at 9 a.m. the next morning. Doesn't matter. And that's how it is with television. With more and more people relying on streaming services and on-demand viewing, you kind of make your own schedule. You know, and this is a very recent thing. And this is not a criticism of television. There are still a lot of great television shows out there. I have not, I love Ted Lasso. I recently it's off the air now, but I loved Better Call Saul. I haven't seen any of these shows, but other shows that people talk about all the time are shows like Abbott Elementary, Somebody Somewhere, Reservation Dogs, Bridgerton. But the overlap in the Venn diagram of critical consensus hits and water cooler discourse bait is getting smaller and smaller. And they say, as of now, the only show that critics and wide audiences both love is The Bear, which I haven't seen. So there's still good television out there. We're just not watching it together. And I guess this is just the nature of technology and the nature of community these days. I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame for the culture. And in some respects, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I think it's part of what's dividing our country. It used to be, and I don't think it was better when we only had 3 channels, but it used to be you knew everybody was watching Ed Sullivan. And the next day you were talking about who was on Ed Sullivan. Now there's nothing like that. There are no shared, very few, the Super Bowl is one, and maybe sports in general. But there are very few shared experiences that we as a country share together that break down racial barriers, socioeconomic barriers, political barriers. Now we're all in our little enclave, in our little silo, where we're watching and experiencing life that in some cases might be totally different. Elias and I might walk down the street tomorrow, and he thinks the sky's blue. I think it's gray. And I think when you have a situation where you have folks that don't even agree that 2 and 2 equals 4, that a person that wins an election actually won an election, then that becomes a very challenging thing for the country. I don't know. I thought it was an interesting article. I hope you read it. I just linked to it. Facebook.com/Morano fan if you want to check it out. It's on Vox. Headline, is anybody watching the same TV shows anymore? 2024 is the year TV went quiet. And it is written by Constance Grady. I do hope you'll check it out. Now, let me tell you what's coming up. In a moment, I will talk with Tom Leykis. Tom Leykis is one of those people that I would make an effort never to miss. In various forms of his show, he just killed it. Killed it as a local host, killed it as a local host in several different markets, then did it as a syndicated host, really just put up incredible numbers in terms of both ratings and revenue, and then did the same thing when streaming was in its infancy with a streaming show, then did the same thing with subscription podcast when nobody could figure out how to make money with podcasting. He was doing it. Well, now apparently he's decided to hang him up. Why would somebody that's been doing this for over 54 years decide to hang him up? We'll find out as I talk to Tom Leykis straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
This is Greg Kelly for Priority Gold. What does it mean to be America's precious metals dealer? It means that you're in touch with the hearts and minds of those who love this country, value our freedom, and want to protect the future. Priority Gold is that precious metals dealer. They've helped thousands of Americans back their retirement with solid gold and silver. Call Priority Gold at 888-506-6439. Receive free shipping, free storage, a free investment guide, and one of the best purchase experiences in the industry. Call now or go to PriorityGold.com.
Long Island is more exciting than ever at Jake's 58 Casino Hotel. Get ready to zoom into some serious cash with Zoom Ball every Wednesday in June. Win up to $500,000. 1 point equals 1 entry. 2 lucky winners will be drawn at the top of every hour from 1 to 5 p.m. to play Zoom Ball. Discover the excitement at Jake's 58 Casino Hotel.
If gambling is a problem for you or someone, please call the 24-hour toll-free helpline at 877-8-HOPE-NY or text NY.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
certainly 3 decades ago, largely associated with the radio program of the one and only Tom Leykis. I believe on his last show on KFI in Phoenix, this was the last thing that Leykis listeners heard at the time. And imagine my surprise when, after over a half century of working in broadcasting in some form or another, Tom Leykis has made the decision to hang him up. Why? After this many years, and why would anybody go voluntarily? Most people I know in radio have to be dragged kicking and screaming, physically removed from the radio station, no matter what their age. Here to tell us about it and a whole bunch of other things, I'm very pleased to welcome my friend, veteran radio talk show host and podcaster, Tom Leykis. Tom, it's great to have you on the program.
Always fun, Frank. Thank you.
So, Tom, what's going on? You've been working since you were 14, and I imagine it sounded like you were kind of already in the mood where you were making your own hours, where you were doing exactly what you wanted to do. It sounded like you had a pretty sweet gig. Didn't sound like you were reporting to a slave driver or something. Why retire?
Because I've been working since 1970. It all began in Babylon, Long Island at WBAB when I was 14. And I've literally been working my whole life. And I've traveled a lot, I've seen a lot, I've met a lot of people, and I've made a lot of money, and I've had a lot of fun. But one thing I've never done in that time to any extent is to relax. I have worked continuously. And when I say continuously, that may not sound like work, coming in and blabbing for 4 or 5 hours, whatever it was. But in addition to doing that, I literally used to go on vacation, then go to work in other cities, filling in as a fill-in. That is how I used to take my vacations. When I worked at KFI in Los Angeles, I frequently took a week off to go to Chicago and work at the Loop. I didn't take vacations. I didn't relax. I did not sit back. Very hard to get me to sit down on a hammock or a chaise lounge without feeling that I have to stand up and I've got somewhere to go. So I have decided finally to enjoy my life. Not that I'm not enjoying it, but I mean to relax, do some traveling, have some fun.
By the way, I didn't mean to transpose KFI to Phoenix. I was thinking of KFYI, not KFI when I mentioned that earlier as well. Good for you. If anybody deserves to have a little bit of fun, it's certainly you. Do you have an agenda or a list of things that you want to do now, places you want to go, things you want to do, or are you just going to see where the moment takes you?
Well, I'm going to see where the moment takes me. One thing I am doing, the very first thing that is on my agenda, is to do all of the things that I've been putting off. And that could be anything from replacing the HVAC unit that I replaced in the house yesterday to making sure that I get up to date with all my medical checkups and make sure I'm in good health. I've already had a very good nutritional program, and I've been working away here. But now I'm going to spend more time doing good things for myself personally.
Well, good for you. Well deserved. Now, I want to pick your brain on a few different things. First, in terms of the nature of broadcasting these days, obviously this is very different in terms of how people are consuming media, how people might be listening to the show for the most part now, as opposed to, when you were 14 years old and you were on the radio for the first time. One of the things that I was just alluding to before you came on is I used to, when I would listen to you, when I would listen to others, there was some urgency that I had to make sure that I was near a radio at a certain time. Now, if people decide they don't want to listen to me now, they want to go to bed or they just can't stay up, they could just catch the podcast the next day. I'm curious what you think that means for, and this is not just the case with radio, it's the case with television, everything's on demand. There's very little urgency in terms of live consumption of media, with the exception of sports. What do you think that means for the future of broadcasting such as it is, Tom?
It means if you do something live, it's going to have to be compelling, more compelling than ever. I mean, certainly 140 or 150 million people watch the Super Bowl every year. But every year it's compelling. Everybody is very interested. I know in my years in radio, there were months in the year when the Supreme Court was on vacation, when the House of Representatives and the Senate were on vacation. And I used to call it hamburger helper radio, where you you essentially had a few crumbs of ground beef and a lot of noodles and sauce. So that's how I described the content creation process.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. One of the people in media that's made a lot of headlines, mostly negatively, in recent weeks has been Alex Jones. Obviously, he did very well in terms of building an audience, made a lot of money, which I know from listening to Monday Mondays with your show is a very important thing, and it's why people should be working. But he also had a tendency to not tell the truth. And that was very much on display with the Sandy Hook situation, where he claimed that the people that were killed weren't really killed. They were actors or something. And it resulted in some of these family members being subjected to harassment and death threats and things like that. Now he's had to file for bankruptcy. There's a multi-billion-dollar judgment against him. But he gets to keep InfoWars. He gets to keep doing his thing. And I don't know, presumably peddling similar mistruths and conspiracy theories. As somebody that's always been a free speech advocate, Tom, but as someone that has never suffered fools easily, what's your take on the whole Alex Jones thing?
Well, I'm going to say I've been in radio a lot longer than Alex Jones. And I'm going to tell you that with as edgy and controversial as my show was, I've had a total of 3 lawsuits. I have lost $0 in damages to anyone because I tell the truth. Now, what I say may be controversial. It may make people angry, but I don't lie about people. I make sure that what I'm saying I can prove, and if I can't prove it, maybe I won't exactly say those things. Maybe I'll hint at them. But how stupid can you be to tell blatant lies on the air, saying things you can't prove, and then go on TV crying that everybody's out to get me, everybody's taking away my freedom? No one has freedom to slander or libel anyone. That is not the freedom we have, and it never was.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if this has any sort of a chilling effect on the kind of commentary he does in the future. Or I know he's doing something on Twitter, or they call it X now, what kind of show he ends up doing there. But we'll be keeping an eye on that. Now, you were originally a New Yorker. You've lived many years out in California, and it looks like California is very much sort of a preview of the direction that New York is going. There's a lot of different policy changes, some different laws that are implemented first in California, and then New York seems to rush to follow close behind. One of those is the new $20 an hour minimum wage for California fast food workers. What's your take on this, Tom? I mean, why shouldn't somebody that works hard in a fast food restaurant be able to make $20 an hour?
Well, let's start with this. Why should only fast food workers make $20 an hour? Not even all teachers make $20 an hour, depending on where they teach and what they teach. Not everybody at fine restaurants makes $20 an hour. Why do we specify fast food restaurants? Makes no sense at all. If you want to do that, give the $20 an hour minimum wage to everybody, which of course they'll never do because the corporations, let's face it, they're busy lining the pockets of politicians from coast to coast, and so clearly they can pick on one industry and not all the rest of the industry.
You know, and one of the things that I'm starting to see in New York is more and more restaurants. I don't go to fast food restaurants, but I heard this from somebody yesterday. They're going totally automated. No humans are even working there. And I think that's in many cases a result of McDonald's or Taco Bell not wanting to pay any humans.
That's exactly right. But for example, I just saw in Florida that employees at Waffle House are about to get a raise to like $5.50 an hour. So, I don't know what's fair. All I know is that I would certainly not specify one industry where people deserve to get paid more. For example, in Los Angeles, housekeepers at hotels on Century Boulevard, down near the airport, they have a higher minimum wage than other hotel workers. Why? What sense does that make?
Well, there's a famous scene in Reservoir Dogs where Steve Buscemi's character gives all of his criminal cohorts a lecture on the culture of tipping. And basically, he doesn't want to tip. And everybody says, well, how come? And then he gives a whole thing and says, how come you don't tip the person at McDonald's? They're both bringing you food, but, you tip this person here, not that person there. Now we're at a point where, as far as tipped workers go, if you actually do see a person at a coffee shop or something, an automated screen comes up, even just for the cashier, asking how much you want to tip that person. More and more folks, and these are not people that I would consider frugal, have called into the show. There's articles been written about this, saying that the tipping culture is totally out of control. What's the Tom Leykis rule of thumb when it comes to tipping?
My rule of thumb is that employers should pay their employees. It's not my job to pay their employees. And so if someone does not do something special for me, something out of the ordinary, something better than you usually get, I'm not tipping. I mean, now I have been faced with tip screens for things like putting coffee in a cup.
Right.
That is not a special service. Putting a falafel ball inside a pita is not a special job. That's what I'm paying $14 for, the falafel and a pita. And that's what you're supposed to provide me. Now, if you give me something else, some extra sauce on the side, some extra onions, or you remember my name, you say something nice to me, we can talk. But people just stuff things in a bag like they always did, and now they want 25% tips for doing that. I saw one the other day. There was somebody who put they put the money they pressed the buttons on a kiosk in a Wendy's, and when they had finished making the order, how many hamburgers, how many fries, how many Cokes, he then asked for a tip. There's no person. There is no interaction. I refuse.
Well, you'll tip a waiter at a restaurant, right? Or a bartender?
I'll tip a good waiter, and I'll usually tip them something, because at least they brought food to my table or a drink to my face. And as you know, there's a long tradition in New York City, for example, where bartenders, if you have a certain number of drinks, usually what I recall was if you bought 3 drinks, they'd spot you a drink. Mm-hmm. And it was just an old tradition. They don't do it in the West, but they did that in New York. I'm going to tip that guy because he did something nice for me that was out of the ordinary. But he put, He put ice cubes in a glass and sprinkled some water in there? That's his job. I'm not paying anything extra for that.
We're talking with Tom Leykis. Hey, Tom, are people going to be able to hear your old shows at all? Is there an option for folks to pay, say, and hear the on-demand archives of some of your older shows?
I considered that possibility, Frank, but unfortunately, we live in a world of lawsuits, libel, slander. My worst nightmare was waking up and remembering that I did some show in 2013 where I said something outrageous, and then in 2025, somebody sues me for something I said 10 years ago. So I am not giving anybody that opportunity. I am pulling it all off the market.
Isn't it a shame, though? I mean, there is some stuff that you've done that's out there on the internet. But isn't it a shame, though, that folks that have never had the experience to hear your show, let's say you get hit by a bus tomorrow, that there will be no new Tom Leykis fans. I can go now and listen to old episodes of Gene Shepard on the radio. And, honestly, it still holds up today.
But Gene Shepard, is dead, died in 1998. Also, Gene Shepard does not work for a radio station anymore. So that reduces the amount of damages somebody get if they file the lawsuit. And, who's to say? One day when I leave this earth, perhaps I'll leave something behind. But while I'm alive, I'm not going to be sued. I'm not going to pay damages for things I already did years ago.
Maybe you could be like Michael Jackson, who keeps releasing these new songs after he's dead, timed for release after he's dead. That might be a nice little bonus for the fans. Especially,
he's not the first one to do it.
No, certainly not. I think that'd be great for a posthumous Money Monday edition or Leykis 101 edition of the Tom Leykis New Normal show or something. I think that'd be great. Hey,
that could happen.
Talking about the changing face of media, one of the things that I've noticed in my own life, and in parts because of these crazy hours, in part it's because, having a small child, I don't go to the movies anymore. I used to really enjoy going. I used to go, maybe twice, 3 times a month. I saw Oppenheimer. Before that, I had not been to the movies in 3, maybe 4 years. And when I mentioned that on the radio, everyone says almost the same thing, that unless there's some event, for some people it was Top Gun, for some people maybe it was Oppenheimer, unless there's something really special, they're not going to the movies. They prefer to stay home, watch a movie that can come out at the same time, watch it in the comfort of your own home with your own snacks, make your own schedule. I'm guessing you're not a big moviegoer either these days, Tom.
I'm not a theater goer. I'm not going to movie theaters. I hate shopping malls, which are dying anyway. Look around, full of empty stores, and parking is a million miles away. $8 for popcorn. Well, why do that? I can do all that at home. I have an 85-inch screen at home, 8K. I can watch any film and it looks better than any movie theater. Why would I waste my time and effort on something like that? Now, I've always said the audience for movies at a movie theater it's young people. It's people 12 to 34. It's people who are dating. It's people who are looking to meet somebody or go out and, they Netflix and chill. They are people who want to go out to a movie and then head home. But if you are not going to a movie to find love, what is the point of it?
Yeah. And I do wonder what will become of all these multiplexes going forward. Tom, one of the things that you're best known for, at least, there's been so many different incarnations of your radio career, and maybe a lot of different listeners know you from doing different things. But one of the things that a lot of us know you for is the advice that you would give, particularly to men, on relationships and talking about relationships. Yesterday, I spent a great deal of time talking about Bill Belichick. I was deluged with email today or, in the last 20 hours, primarily from women, but not exclusively, who said they thought the situation with 72-year-old Bill Belichick dating a 24-year-old woman was gross. They said, look, this is clearly a situation where she's using him for his money and he's using her for her body. And it was just so repulsive to a lot of these folks that wrote to me, a 72-year-old being with a 24-year-old. Where do you come down on the question of a nearly 50-year age gap between a couple?
Who Bill Belichick dates or who I date is nobody's business. If people don't like it, they don't have to look. They don't have to deal with me. They don't have to talk to me. We already know about what goes on in that Patriots organization. We had Mr. Kraft, who apparently was visiting a strip mall, where it was more than a strip mall. That just kind of seems to be the attitude. Look, what do we care who Bill Belichick is dating, and why isn't any of our business?
Right.
Does he owe the world to date a 70-year-old? Why is that anybody's business?
Right. Apparently he does. He owes us all an explanation if he's not dating the folks that we deem it's appropriate. Tom, I hope we can still call upon you to come on the radio on this program from time to time. And I hope now with your newly liberated schedule, I'll get to see you in New York a little bit more often.
Yeah, you are, and I will be sure to stop by, no doubt.
Thank you, Tom. And for old time's sake, blow me up.
The Other Side of Midnight. Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Singing It Hurts to Be in Love. You know, those of you that are like us triviaholics will appreciate the fact that this was the first song that Tom ever played on the radio. It was not his selection. He won a contest to be on the radio and had a whole list of songs that he was going to play. Brought in records, but it was not to be. He had to play the songs that they wanted him to play. And this was the very first song he ever played, and yet he stuck with it. Stuck with radio even after that. All right, 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Yesterday, my son was again off from school, this time for, I don't remember, I think it was for a Muslim holiday. Not that there are any Muslim students in his class, but okay. Then on Wednesday, he's off again for Juneteenth. And so we really got so lucky in that his old babysitter, my old friend Lorraine, who's just a wonderful person and a good friend who I've known for 2 decades, she was kind enough to be willing to be called back into service just for a couple of days. So she agreed to watch Carmine yesterday while I slept and my wife worked, and she took him to the different parks and they went on a whole adventure, which was great. They went to different playgrounds and different parks. And one of the places they went to is, those of you that are in the New York or New Jersey area will know this, but those of you that are not won't, is a place called the Conference House. Matt, are you familiar with the Conference House at all? Conference House is a wonderful historic treasure. It's the southernmost point of New York, right before you get to New Jersey. And it's a stone's throw from where I grew up, basically up the block from where my father still lives. And it's a historic treasure. It's a beautiful park. And in the park is a house. And at this house in 1776, on September 11th, Edward Rutledge, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin met with Lord William Howe to try and bring an end to the Revolutionary War. It was basically a peace summit, and they were trying to figure out how they could bring an end to the hostilities. Didn't work out, obviously. The war continued. But so Carmine went there, and apparently he was adamant that he did not want to take a picture with Benjamin Franklin. And then when he came home, he told my wife and me, I didn't like the restaurant. And my wife's telling him, no, it's not a restaurant. What's it called? And my son is just saying, I didn't like the man inside to take a picture. So for whatever reason, my son is not a fan of Benjamin Franklin, which I was sorry to hear, because I'm a big Franklin fan, and hopefully the more he learns about him, the more he'll become a fan of Benjamin Franklin. Bobby is in Florida. What's on your mind, Bobby?
Hey, Frank. How you doing tonight, bud?
I'm great, Bobby. You sound bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, which we like.
All the time, man. I really enjoyed the interview you just had with Tom Leykis, because I've been listening to Tom Leykis for 13 years. At one point, I was his number one caller, and they used to have events and everything, and I would be, going out there, and they put me on stage and everything.
Oh, cool.
Because, yeah, we had a lot of fun out there, and Tom Likas is just a good guy. He made sure that everything's taken care of when out there, and it was just an amazing experience, and he really showed me that even if you're down and out and things like that too, because one time I was homeless and I had to go through.
Bobby, I'm glad you're doing well now, and I'm glad you liked the interview. I thank you for calling, and when we start doing events in Florida, hopefully you'll come to our events as well. I appreciate the feedback and the nice call. All right, 800-848-9222. In the words of the great Bob Barker, help control the pet population. Get your dog or cat spayed or neutered.
This is The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
They're running a strange program, y'all.
Now, here's Frank Morano.
You, but in our area, I have seen nothing but headlines about a heat wave. And New York Times, for instance, has the headline, "An early heat wave is sweeping the country." Now, it's not even summer yet. You still got a couple of days. And even though the official start of summer is still days away, the Midwest yesterday was already enveloped in extreme levels of heat and humidity that could last throughout much of the week. The heat index, which is a measure of how the temperature feels, hit 102 degrees in Cincinnati. Similarly, sweltering conditions are expected to push into the Northeast beginning tomorrow and continuing into the weekend. The area sometimes reaches such high temperatures in late July or August, but it will be it's a little early for this amount of heat. I don't mind the heat. When I say I don't mind it, that's mostly because I'm indoors and asleep when it's during the day. But I would mind it if I was somebody that worked outdoors. If I was a construction worker and I was doing a lot of manual labor outdoors, you can bet this would be quite oppressive. If this was even, I look at the people who are postal workers or Amazon delivery people, and yeah, they get to drive around, but they're still walking around to all these houses out in the heat. That's when the people that do physical outdoor labor when it's this hot, those are the people that make me realize how lucky I am to be able to do this in a climate-controlled, air-conditioned studio, just pontificating and trying to be entertaining for a few hours every day. People that are out there doing construction, those guys are really working. And when it's 100 degrees outside, they are really working. But I was wondering if you, given that there's a lot of people listening to this show, all walks of life, young, old, black, white, the heat or the weather in general is something that affects everybody. There's no escaping the heat. And I mean, unless you just don't go outside, but who wants to do that? And I was wondering if you had any suggestions on how to survive a heat wave. When I say suggestions, let's put aside the obvious, right? Let's put aside go in a pool. Let's put aside stay in an air-conditioned area. Let's just assume we've said those. What are some unorthodox methods that you might have for surviving a heat wave. You know, we have two listeners there. It's a couple, Chick and Lou, who don't have air conditioning. They have lived in the same house for many years and they don't have air conditioning. And one of their tips, I think, is, I hope I'm not betraying any confidences here, is I am told that Lou sleeps naked all the time. When it's this hot, especially, he is sleeping naked. I remember Lynn Samuels, who was a terrific radio talk show host back in the day. She unfortunately passed away. She never had air conditioning either. And one of her tips was she would take a bath. And then she would open all the windows. And for some reason, that simulated a cooling effect. A bath followed by the breeze, if there was a breeze, of all the open windows. That's the kind of pro tip that I'm looking for. Because, look, we have window units in our house. So we have air conditioning. And when it's this hot, we'll keep them going, especially in my son's room. But no one wants to use these air conditioners all day and night. And your electric bill is going to go crazy unless you have solar panels. And you are going to, risk causing a whole bunch of people to suffer brownouts and things like that. That's where you always get those warnings. Don't set your air conditioning below 78 degrees, even when it's this hot out, to conserve power usage. Look, there's something to be said for that. If everybody is pumping their air conditioning like crazy and it's falling below a certain level and there's this much energy usage, it's going to play a role. Now, it is interesting to me. I'll share a letter that I got with you a little bit later. We are going to read through your email correspondence in a bit. If you want to email me and have a letter read on the air, you can do so, frank.morano@redappleaudionetworks.com. That's frank.morano at redappleaudionetworks.com. But here we are this week, a heat wave enveloping much of the country. I'd like to know if you have any suggestions on how to stay cool, whether it's, a creative way to enjoy an ice pop, whether it's putting a hat in the freezer before you put it on, whatever it is, I'd love to hear it. 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Matt Blaze, how do you handle the heat? Are you bothered by the heat?
Well, I do have air conditioning as well, so I stay inside.
So you stay inside, right?
Yeah,
and you have a swimming pool too, right?
Right.
And do you use it?
When it gets really hot, I do. Mm-hmm. Because the water's nice. It's weird because the water's warm, but it's like compared to the heat, it's still, and it's 85 degrees, the water, but it still just feels perfect. That's when the water feels perfect.
You don't have a heater in the pool, right?
No.
Yeah. No. I have some friends that keep the water so warm, which I hate when it's this hot.
Yeah, when it's this hot, you want the sun just to heat up the water.
Exactly.
And that's fine. That's
right.
Because it'll get to 85, 86 degrees, which is pretty warm for water. In terms of the air conditioning, and I don't think it works the same as with window units because you're manufacturing the air. But I know with central air, like even when it's 95 degrees out, the central air, if it's sized right for your house, will only put out like 80 degrees of the temperature of the air will be 80 degrees. It only goes like 15 degrees below what the air is that it takes in. So even though it's cooler, it's still hot. So you'll never get, unless you have a really giant AC that's supposed to get it like freezer cold. But I know my air conditioning will be running all day because it'll never get that cold because it's so hot outside. But I would say, as a tip, wet towel around your neck.
Wet towel, with cold water on it?
Yep, a wet towel, cold water, like a hand towel, and just put that around your neck.
That's pretty good. I like that. Cool. What do you keep it around there all the time when you're?
Yeah, once it's wet, it'll stay damp, and then obviously it's getting hot, and it may dry up. So once in a while, you stick it under the sink, cold water, rinse it out so you're not dripping, and put a cold towel around your neck.
All right. I like it. Give me your pro tip. 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. You know who I have a tip for? and I don't mean it in what we thought was the to ensure promptness category. I mean it in the advice category. Our ice cream man, Jesse, he comes on our block every day around 3:45. And, he's a good ice cream man. He does a good job. He's got a decent enough selection. Not a crazy good selection, but it's decent. He does not take credit cards. So I can't tell you how often a parent, because there's a lot of children on our block, a parent will be at the window of the ice cream truck, and they'll say, all right, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And usually one parent will treat for 4 or 5 kids. And, then another day, another parent will do it. But a lot of times a parent will not have cash on them and they'll want to use their credit card or something. And he does, or Venmo. And they don't take Venmo or a credit card. Now, I always make an effort to have cash, but they should take Venmo. That's my 2 cents. If you're an ice cream man today, that's my suggestion to you. 800-848-9222. John, give me a pro tip on beating the heat.
Well, for working outside all day, I take a little bit of creatine that the bodybuilders use. That way, the water stays in my muscles and they don't cramp up if I don't happen to drink enough water or anything.
John, this is
me for years.
This is exactly the kind of thing that I want to hear, because this is something I have never heard before. Does this actually work? Do you know what you're talking about, or are you just making this up? This is really interesting.
No, I've used it for years just because I've noticed when I first started doing all this years ago that sometimes you don't have access to as much water as you should. So I just kind of figured out that that's what it does for bodybuilders. It keeps the fluid in the muscles. So I figured, let me give it a whirl. I tried it, and ever since, I never cramp up outside anymore, no matter how hot it gets or anything, as long as I remember to take it.
I love that, John. John, do you work outside now?
Yeah, construction.
Wow, see, you're exactly the kind of person I'm talking about. You're the guys I walk by and I say, oh, those poor guys. Those are guys that are really working. Good for you, John. Thanks for the tip. That's exactly what I'm talking about. 800-848-9222. Jason in Illinois, you have a pro tip for us?
I've heard some stories and seen some stuff on TikTok about little styrofoam coolers and regular little house fans and bags of ice. They can keep rooms cool for 3 hours. You just gotta look it up, know what you're doing.
Well, so Jason, take me through this. So styrofoam cooler, okay,
Yeah.
and then what?
You put the ice in the cooler and you blow the fan through a hole in the cooler and out the top of the cooler.
Actually,
and it can last hours.
That is interesting, Jason. I've never tried that before, but thank you. That is not entirely dissimilar to what happened when President Garfield was shot. When James Garfield was shot, there was, he was convalescing in the White House for a couple of months, and they didn't have air conditioning back then. They invented, first of all, they had Alexander Graham Bell invent a metal detector, which was wild, to try to find the bullet within him. And there's a wonderful book about this called Destiny of the Republic, which is one of my favorite history books or presidential books that I've ever read. And I can't recommend it enough, by Candace Millard, I believe is the author. And just as far as that goes, as far as that metal detector goes, Alexander Graham Bell didn't realize when he's using this metal detector on Garfield, not the cat, but the president, that he was sitting or he was lying on one of the very rare beds with metal springs in it. So this metal detector was going off like crazy. So they thought it didn't work. Meanwhile, the metal detector did work, but they didn't know that he was on a metal bed at the time. So it kept pointing them in the wrong direction of where the bullet was. But they developed sort of an impromptu air conditioning unit, and it's not entirely dissimilar from that styrofoam cooler method that Jason just alluded to. 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Don in St. Louis, listening on KMOX. What do you got for us, Don?
Well, I think there's two ways you can go about it. If I was heated and had to get some sleep, sometime I have put hand towels in the refrigerator and froze them. And as I was going to sleep, I might put that on my chest or put it on my forehead. And there's also those little packets that you get that you would put to keep things frozen. You can get those. You can wrap those in towels. That'll happen at night. But you can also take the handkerchiefs, that the neckerchiefs, put those in the refrigerator, and you can freeze those in water, and you can put those around your neck or up under your hat to keep you cool.
These are all good. You know, I don't know if you were affected by this 21 years ago, Don. Were you affected by that massive blackout back in 2003?
Yes.
Okay, so you were affected. I know some parts of the country weren't. I know in Jersey they weren't affected at all, but where I live, it was bad, and it was very hot out. And I remember trying to fall asleep that night and with no air conditioning because you had no power, and I couldn't do it. Not only no power, but I couldn't even put on a ceiling fan because there was no electricity. And I had such a difficult time sleeping. And this is why I've never really gotten the allure of living in Florida, because I've heard from so many different people that have lived down there, and it's like this all the time where you essentially wake up sweating, which is not for me. So I couldn't fall asleep. So what I actually did was I went out to the car and I turned on the car and lied down in the car with the air conditioning blasting just to get 20, 30, 40 minutes of being cool and being able to sleep. Had I had your method, this handkerchief/rag method in the freezer, which I guess is kind of common sense, I would have been able to sleep without going and wasting all my gasoline.
I think it will work for anybody.
I like it, Don. Don, thank you. 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. The original Rick is in Original Jersey. Hi.
Yeah, good morning, Frank. Good morning. I just thought you'd find this interesting. All these people talking about ice and fans over the ice. I'm looking at it right now, something from my childhood. My father bought an air conditioner. It actually, you pour ice cubes in the back of it, and it blows air over. It's exactly what that guy was talking about with the styrofoam case with the ice in it, only it was a commercial version of that. And my mother sent my father out to buy an air conditioner, and he came back with that, and she blew her top. You know, it's like you literally have to pour trays of ice cubes in the back of the unit, and then the fan blows the air over the ice.
You know,
it worked very
what was it called? I never heard of an air conditioning.
Weather Zone. I'm looking at it right now, and it's all, you know, old and all that, but Weather Zone. And it was this little box about the size of a bread box. You poured ice cube trays in the back, and it just blew air over it. That was it.
So it's better than a regular air conditioner because it doesn't use Freon? Is that what it is?
Well, in those days, in 1954, regular air conditioners had to be 220 volts. You didn't have 110. So you had to have your whole house rewired. That's why so many places didn't have air conditioning. It was only until the 1960s that you had 110 air conditioning. So that was the only way you could get air conditioning if you had 110. This basically this Weather Zone.
I like it. Okay, a Weather Zone. Do they still make them?
No, I'm sure not. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Of course it is.
Ice cubes in the back.
But I like that. Do you still use yours though?
No, it's for I think my old stuff out just to look at all the old cameras, all the old little Walkmans and Watchmans, and I just like them to have up and
Yeah, I still can't bring myself, and it's driving my wife crazy because I just have a massive mountain of clutter that's just growing. I can't bring myself to throw out my old portable television set, even though it doesn't receive transmission anymore because of the conversion to digital. I think we've talked about that before. Rick, thank you. 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Alex is in Brooklyn. Hello, Alex.
Hey, good morning, Frank.
Morning.
So a solution I thought of, because I think the way you feel from temperature also has to do with mentally. also in the brain somewhat. So I think a possible solution could be, if, say you're going out for a half hour in the sweltering heat, if you put on a lot of layers and you take out all your winter equipment and your coats and sweaters and scarves and you layer it up one on top of the other, and you go out and every 5 minutes you take off one layer after another, you're going to keep on feeling not so hot for a couple of minutes every time you take off, every singular layer. And if you end up with no layers at all at some point, you'll just have to wait a couple of minutes till the cops pick you up and they'll put you into an air-conditioned car. So
very good, Alex. I like it. I like it a lot. That's very funny. It's fun. It is funny in that I don't recommend that strategy, putting aside the last aspect of what he said, but I don't recommend that strategy to anybody because you will feel cooler, but for a while you're actually heating up. You're essentially overheating. But what he mentions about your perspective is an important one. When I was young, I don't know why, but when I was young, my parents would take me to a lot of nice restaurants. And one of the things that bothered me, it doesn't really bother me anymore, but one of the things that bothered me as a child was I couldn't stand dark restaurants. I don't know why, and when I say as a child, I mean 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? That age range. I guess I grew out of this little idiosyncrasy, but I couldn't stand dark restaurants. And what I noticed a couple of times is I'd get so upset that there was a dark restaurant that what I would do is for 5 or 10 minutes, I would put on sunglasses inside the dark restaurant. And then after 5 or 10 minutes, you take the sunglasses off and the restaurant doesn't look dark anymore. It looks bright because your eyes have adjusted to being in a super dark place. Now, I don't recommend that to anybody, but for 10-year-old me, it worked like a charm. By the way, 800-848-9222. There's a heat wave coming. You're going to hear a lot of heat wave themed commentary and news alerts, warnings to stay indoors, to go to cooling centers. In fact, Lorraine, who's kind enough to watch Carmine yesterday and Wednesday for Juneteenth, is going to take Carmine to the movies for the first time, to the movie theater. They're going to go see this new Garfield movie. This one is about the cat, not about the president. But I'm curious how he does with that whole thing. It's a fun. I think he's going to be into it. We'll see. I haven't taken him yet, but I'm glad Lorraine is able to take him. Gina is in Brooklyn. You have a pro tip for us, Gina.
Yes, Frank. My mother told me years ago, she was a nurse, that if we drink hot fluids when we're hot, it's counterintuitive, but it actually helps you to retain less heat inside your body. And now I'm looking it up on the internet, and they're saying recent studies prove this advice that was given to some of us from our nanas, but it actually was my mother who told me this.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I've heard that same thing. So you would say for today, for people to enjoy a nice hot cup of coffee, nice hot cup of tea, nice hot bowl of soup, and eschew the iced tea and iced coffee and the smoothies.
Well, it says that it would prove better to do that, except if you're in a sauna or if you're in a swimming pool where you can't sweat at all. Because with the hot beverage, it will help you to help your sweat evaporate. That's what it says.
So you're having a hot beverage today?
Well, I drink black coffee all the time, so I know this happens to be true because I paid attention to my mother's advice. But it does seem counterintuitive.
Right, but I've seen that as well. The science does support you and your mother on this, Gina. And you know who else agrees with you, and thanks for the call, is Cliff Clavin. Cliff Clavin, that great philosopher, explained that just as you would drink hot beverages when it's hot out to actually cool you, when it's cold outside, like during a blizzard, you should be drinking a nice ice cold beer.
Well, what I can't fathom is how one can drink ice cold beer in freezing weather.
Cliff, explanation, please.
Now, how do you know he has one?
$5 says he does, 10 says it's a doozy. when the British ruled the Punjab. $10 all the way. They drank steaming hot pots of tea on the hottest days of the year to balance out their inside and outside temperatures. See, conversely, drinking an ice-cold drink on a cold day actually results in a more comfortable body temperature.
All right. Why do you drink ice-cold beer on a hot day?
Mr. Clavin, what else you gonna do with it?
I love it. Show is still so great. 800-848-9222. Robert calling from the great WCBM in Baltimore. Hi, Robert.
Hey, something I used to do all the time is put a wet shirt on and or wet my hair. I used to go out and jog a lot, even when it was 90 degrees or more. It's like you're walking around with your own little air conditioner. Now, it doesn't answer some of the other things that people have been talking about, but for that thing where you have to be outside for a little while, soak yourself down. It's called heat of vaporization, basic physics, and you will lose, or at least you'll lose some body heat that you would not if you were not wet.
So put on a wet T-shirt. That's the strategy.
But you got to keep it wet. And if you're out in the heat, 15 minutes later, it'll be sort of drying off. So I would have a spray bottle with me that I'd keep in the shade. I could spray it all over my shirt every 15 minutes. I could jog for an hour or two in 90 degrees, and I wouldn't die.
I like this.
But it's risky. If it's hot outside, you don't want to be drinking hot beverages because your body needs to get rid of the heat. If it's cold outside, you want to drink warm stuff.
But what about what Gina and the scientists are saying, that by drinking a hot beverage, it causes you to sweat, and that actually cools you down?
When you're really hot, your whole body is hot. You're hot inside, too. And one of the ways when someone's really got a heat stroke and you bring them into the hospital, and you put coolness all over them. You put coolness in the IV. You put coolness in drinking. You put coolness around their body. You actually stick them in a cold tub. So, you try to cool them any way you can. The last thing you would do is put heat into them.
All right. Well, so be it. So I guess you're calling Gina.
That's really what we do in the hospital.
I believe you. And I know you're a physician. Thanks, Robert. Robert says Gina's mother is full of it. And Cliff Clavin, apparently. I don't know how I feel about that. All right. 800-848-9222. Mickey is in the Queens. Hello, Mickey.
Oh, good morning, Frank. Thank you for taking the call. Don't drink cold drinks when it's very hot, because the body has to work triple hard to change it to your body temperature. I heard that sometime, and I drink room temperature even if it's very hot.
Oh, so you say not hot or cold, but room temperature?
Yeah, room temperature, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Mickey, thank you. So now we have 3 views on what the temperature should be of your drinks today. So you know what I think you should do? And I may try this. Let's try all 3. Have a hot beverage, then a cold beverage, then a room temperature beverage. See what cools you down the most. Right? Makes sense. Matt, where are you on this cold, hot room
It's funny because last week I had some landscapers at my house, and one of the guys wanted hot coffee, and it was hot out. And we were like, why do you want hot coffee? And he said, this is what I drink. And I'm looking it up just to see what it says. And I found it says, according to a study at the University of Ottawa, drinking a hot drink when it's warm outside can cool you down so long as you're not already sweating. So if you're not sweating, it will cause you to sweat. I guess if you're already sweating, it's not good. And it's saying that a hot beverage triggers your body's sweat response without raising your core temperature too much. But I guess if you're already sweating, your temperature is already raised.
Okay.
Is what it's saying.
All right. Very good.
I don't like drinking hot fluid ever. The only time I ever drink anything hot is when I'm sick to soothe my throat. That's the only time. So when it's really hot, I'm drinking water.
Even
cold water.
Even when it's cold, you're not drinking anything hot?
No. Well, not usually. Only when I'm sick. I don't drink coffee. If anything, it would be tea. But yeah, it's just the hot beverages. I just don't like them. I don't know.
So be it. Well, are you doing Diet Dr. Pepper today? So you bring in one yesterday.
I tried Dr. Pepper Zero today.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing.
I didn't either. And I got it. I got to say, Diet Dr. Pepper tastes more like regular Dr. Pepper than Dr. Pepper Zero.
Interesting.
Dr. Pepper Zero had like a little hint of Dr. Pepper taste, but that was it.
Okay. All right. So be it.
People know.
Hey, we're going to go. Those of you that are on hold, I will get to you, but we're going to read through your mail correspondence in a moment. And if you want to send me an email, you can. Frank.Morano@redappleaudionetworks.com. Straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Singing Cruel Summer. If you want to know what kind of music we're playing on this program, join the Facebook group. Just go onto Facebook and type Morano, Morano Radio, fans and haters. It's also meant to be a discussion group for people to discuss the subjects that we talk about on this show. It's not meant to be a group for just posting general interest news. It's also, it's meant to be a group where people are nice to one another. I don't mind if you badmouth me, but I really get frustrated when other folks start attacking one another because they disagree, especially over a political issue or something along those lines. So just be nice to one another if you join the group. In fact, we're looking for more good, nice people to join the group so it drowns out, hopefully, the nabobs of negativism, which is, I think, what Spiro Agnew called them. All right. I have gotten a lot of correspondence from you via text message, via email. I did not see any new snail mail today, and even via Facebook. So if you want your letter read on the air, go ahead and email me, frank.morano@redappleaudionetworks.com. That's frank.morano@redappleaudionetworks.com as we embark upon...
Letters, oh, we get letters. We get your letters every day. Mailman, mailman, mail today. Reach right in and pull one out. Those letters, I love those letters. Let's find out what you got to say. Oh boy! Mailman, mail today.
This is a great one. This comes to us from Facebook. This is a listener named Michael. He writes, "Good morning. I'm a regular listener of your show, and I find it entertaining and fantastic. What I like most about your show and you as a host, it's not all politics, and I don't hear you making fun or saying derogatory things about other people, which is common on talk shows today. I have a question. I'm interested in reading about Teddy Roosevelt, as I'm an avid reader. So my question to you, which book would you suggest that I start with about Teddy? I will continue to listen to the show, and I enjoy the videos that you post here on Facebook through the years, especially the book reviews that you've done in the past. I'm not a member of your Facebook group because some of the group members say and print awful stuff, and it's just not for me. So, Frank, I hope that you have a wonderful day, and any direction that you can give with books on the Teddy Roosevelt subject would be appreciated. Thanks." Wonderful question. And for me, it is impossible to answer because there are so many great books about Theodore Roosevelt. And this is a man that might have been an alien or a robot or something because he died before he was 60. And he accomplished in 60 years enough for 10 lifetimes. What he did in one of those years, that would be more than most people accomplish in a whole lifetime. So honestly, and I'm not trying to, it's not a cop-out here. It depends on what aspect of Theodore Roosevelt's life you're most interested in. Most people are interested in his presidency. And if that's you, then the book that you need to read is Theodore Rex by Edmund Morris. If a lot of people are interested in Theodore Roosevelt's life before he became president, if that's you, the book you need to read is also an Edmund Morris book called The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. For me, because I'm a third-party nerd, the aspect of Roosevelt's life that I'm interested in is the aspect of his life that has been the least covered and the least studied by academics, and honestly, probably the one that the fewest people care about. The aspect of TR's life that I'm most interested in is his life after the presidency, especially when he ran for president as a third-party candidate and then wanted to do so again in 1916 and 1920. And if that's you, there's 3 books that I recommend strongly. One, 1920, The Year of the Six Presidents. That is by David Pietruzza. It's not just about Teddy Roosevelt. It's about the election of 1920. And that was an interesting year because that was the only year in American history where you had 6 past, current, or future presidents all running or trying to run for president or vice president. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And the way that David Pietruzza, who's been a guest on this show, tells the story of blending what was going on with Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt and Theodore Roosevelt, and it's just an incredible, incredible story that I can't recommend enough. And obviously Warren G. Harding, who ultimately won that year, and Herbert Hoover, who was also talked about as president that year. So that's one. Another one is another David Pietruzza book. I have to warn you, the epilogue on this book is very controversial. It's almost considered sacrilege by a lot of Roosevelt scholars. And for this reason, I'm not going to tell you what the epilogue says, but because David Pietruzza raises an interesting theory in the epilogue about Theodore Roosevelt and his death. The Theodore Roosevelt Library will not carry that book. And I think a lot of Theodore Roosevelt scholars shy away from it because of that epilogue. But if you're offended by controversial ideas, just stop before you get to the epilogue. It's called Roosevelt at War by David Pietruzza. And this chronicles the run-up to World War I and everything that Roosevelt did during and after. It's a wonderful book. And then another one, and it's been a few years since I've read this, but I read it actually 20 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. It's a masterful look at Roosevelt's post-presidency. It's called When Trumpets Call, Theodore Roosevelt After the White House. It's by Patricia O'Toole. Wonderful book. One of the things that I find so interesting about Theodore Roosevelt, though, is another book I'm going to mention, but an aspect of his life that I find interesting is his relationship with other people. Because on the one hand, you got the sense that he took relationships very seriously, that it really mattered to him, that he put a lot of effort into maintaining relationships, and he'd get broken up when a friend would die, let's say. But you also get the sense at different aspects of his life that everyone was disposable, that everyone existed just for the moment. And if they didn't fit into Theodore Roosevelt's, strategy, then they were out. And that's why a book that I have to recommend is called The Bully Pulpit by Doris Kearns Goodwin. That book focuses on the relationship between two people, William Howard Taft and Theodore Roosevelt, and their role with the media. And they went from being the best of friends to bitter political rivals to ultimately reconciling. And that book tells three stories. It tells Taft's story, Roosevelt's story, and the story of the muckraking media at that time. I recommend that. A lot of people are interested in Theodore Roosevelt's safaris. If that's you, you got to read River of Doubt by Candace Millard. A lot of people are interested in the Spanish-American War. If that's you, I recommend Clay Risen, The Crowded Hour. But I have to mention, there are so many great Theodore Roosevelt books that I've never read. So there could be, and they're on my shelf. I have them all, but I just haven't gotten to them yet. In my fishbowl of the next book that I read, one of them might always be a Theodore Roosevelt book. David McCullough had a book about TR that I haven't read that I'm told is very good. Same thing with Evan Thomas. There's been a lot of others. So these are just the ones that I've read. It all depends on what aspect of your life, of his life, you're interested in. There's a new book now coming out about his relationship with women, meaning his mother and his wives specifically. But a lot of people have written about his time as New York City police commissioner. A lot of people have written about him as a hunter, as a scientist, as a crime fighter, as a soldier, as an explorer. There's just so many aspects of his life to explore that in some ways it's just the most difficult question to answer. All right, this is via text message. In the comments about our interview, our discussion about the Pope and comedians yesterday, perhaps the Pope is considering adding a court jester to his team to lighten things up. Very funny. All right, this is another SMS text message. This is unsigned, but it's from a 973 number. Frank, I know you are fond of professional wrestling and professional wrestling history. If you were to come up with a Mount Rushmore of 4 professional wrestlers to put on it as being the most significant in pro wrestling history, who would it be? Wow, that's a tough question. Okay. I have to put Ric Flair on there. Ric Flair, as far as I'm concerned, is the greatest wrestler of all time. And the level of impact that he's had on wrestling in 4, maybe 5 different decades is like nobody's ever had. And he was the face of the NWA for so many years, and then of WCW for so many years, and then played a big role in the WWF. So I'm putting Ric Flair up there. It's not just because he's my favorite wrestler. He's up there. You have to put Hulk Hogan up there. I don't know if pro wrestling becomes what it is today, but for what happened in the 1980s and 90s, and Hulk Hogan was a big part of that. Some people would say he was the critical element of it. And then, for the same reasons, for the late 90s, early 2000s, I got to put Stone Cold Steve Austin on there. And then the 4th, I'm trying to pick the best different eras of pro wrestling, and it's got to be the 70s, right? So the 4th one that I'm putting on there is either going to be Andre the Giant or Bruno Sammartino. I hate to not put Andre on there, but I think it's got to be Bruno. So those are my 4: Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. I think that is a strong Mount Rushmore. Okay, email. Daniel writes, Frank, so I heard it yet again this morning. Turn your AC up to 78 degrees for fear of a brownout due to overtaxing the grid. But the same morons are also saying out of the other side of their mouth, saying that they want to plug in every single car in the country. Please explain. I can't. And honestly, and it's maybe because I don't know enough about electricity and science, it does seem contradictory. You want to conserve power on the one hand, and then you want everybody to plug in an electric vehicle on the other hand. That's Dan. That is a certain amount of hypocrisy there. Linda writes on the subject of the Pope's meeting with 100 comedians. Hi, Frank. You mentioned that you wondered why the Pope met with 100 comedians. Just a thought. Obviously, I have absolutely no way of knowing the answer to the question, but I have noticed that over the last few years, quite a few comedians have changed their comedic style, so to speak. Unfortunately, some of them have become quite vicious and cruel when performing because all they focus on is politics and downgrading those who they perceive as a political enemy or opponent. Then they generally attack the followers of the politicians whom they disagree with. I believe many comedians have set aside comedy and replaced it with politics, at times being quite cruel, vicious, and anything but humorous. Could the Pope possibly be trying to tactfully let the comedians know that through comedy and not vicious politics, they could be extremely helpful in healing some of the ills of today's societies? Just a thought. Happy Father's Day. Carmine sounds so adorable. God bless him. Stay well. Linda, thank you, Linda. That's nice. All right, Peter. Oh, no, that's not for public attribution. See here. This person writes, you've mentioned that you were banned a while ago from the Museum of Natural History. If so, are you still banned? Is it a ban for life? Just wondering. Great show. Have a wonderful weekend. You know, Linda, I never got any formal paperwork about that ban. I don't know. That was a ban arranged by John from Brooklyn. So I really can't say. I was able to go to an event there and nobody stopped me. I will tell you, when I gave them my name at the door, I was quite nervous that I was going to be asked to leave in front of my colleagues. Didn't happen. I was able to sneak my way in. Lastly, Ellen writes, hi, Frank, just finished listening to your beautiful tribute to Tony LoBianco. It was obvious from your heartfelt words that you held this man in very high esteem, not only for his talent, but for the kind of person he was. Frank, your tributes are typically some of the best I've ever heard, and this was no exception. But what confounds me this time around was how you managed to put something together so meaningful, that was so meaningful given the fact that you just heard about his passing minutes before, another Morano mystery. Ellen, first of all, I have to give credit to Elias, who helped us dig up some of the audio there last minute, and I believe Tony did as well. It would have been even more impressive if I had my hard drive back and I had some of my older interviews with Tony LoBianco, which are on that hard drive, which is now who knows where. But I appreciate the comment and the compliment very much. Until next time.
Another letter from our listener,
The Other Side of Midnight. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Dedicate one to the ladies. Sometimes a babe needs something to keep you cool. Now sometimes a babe needs something to keep you cool. Better look out now, though. Dave's got something for you. Tell you what it is. I'm your ice cream man. Stop me when I'm passing by. On my mind, I'm your ice cream man. Stop me when I'm passing by.
Van Halen, Ice Cream Man, a terrific song. Hey, you know what I've been working on? I've been trying to, and I'm driving my wife crazy with this because she hates that I'm spending this amount of time on this when I already have 7 other radios. I've been trying to get the radio that I want at Talkers to work. It's a solar-powered radio and a hand crank radio, but I've been keeping it in the windowsill with the sun shining on it directly for days, and it only powers for 30 seconds or so. And then I put double A's in it because there's an option for double A's, and that didn't work either. So I was reading the manual yesterday, and I learned 2 things. I learned, number 1, that if the battery is fully depleted, which I guess this is, you have to give it 42 hours of direct sunlight before it'll work again. So maybe I just haven't given it enough sunlight. So I'm developing a new sunlight strategy to make sure it gets the maximum amount of sunlight. But I also saw that it won't take lithium batteries, meaning lithium AA's. And one of the batteries that I had in there was a lithium battery. So I took that out and put another AA in, but the AA's still aren't working. So this is going to be one of my projects for today. I'm going to keep it in the sun, but I'm going to try a brand new set of AA batteries. I think it takes 3, and see if that does anything, because it's very frustrating. And my wife she doesn't understand. She says, look, why? You have a radio in every other room. What's so important about this radio? And the answer is, I don't know. But I just feel compelled to get this radio working. Brand new. And it's got to be something that I'm doing. So I've been reading the manual, trying to figure it out. Who knows? Maybe I'll reach out to them and see if there's anything they can suggest. We'll see. Meantime, keep asking questions.
This is The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
They're running a strange program, y'all.
Now, here's Frank Morano.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. I think it should go without saying that social media, which gets villainized quite often, can play a very positive role in people's lives. If you are super alienated from society, if you're super lonely, if you don't have the means of going out and connecting with people and meeting people in person, it can be a great way to meet new people, to stay in touch with people. If you have family that has moved elsewhere and you want to stay in touch with them and see photos of friends and family members, it is great for that. If you're looking to organize a protest movement in Tunisia or Egypt, it is great for that. There's a lot of negative aspects of social media, but I think when we always focus on the negative aspects of it, we overlook a lot of the very positive aspects of it. It's a great way to discover new radio shows, new television shows, new podcasts. It's a great way to have interactive discussions with people. It can do a lot of things, which is why, billions of people are on it. But the fact remains that for children, the documented effects of social media use are largely negative. I'm not saying there aren't some positives there as well, but I think they're largely negative. So, why are we mentioning this? Well, the Surgeon General of the United States, Vivek Murthy, thinks social media should come with a warning label. He wrote an op-ed in the New York Times yesterday that has been shared all over my news feeds on all forms of social media. Why? Well, he wants a warning that social media has been linked to mental health risks for adolescents. It's really interesting. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will share it on my Facebook page, because if you're on Facebook already, chances are it's too late for you. You're probably beyond redemption. Whatever damage is going to be done is probably already done. Facebook.com/MoranoFan if you want to read it. Here's an excerpt. The mental health crisis among young people is an emergency, and social media has emerged as an important contributor. Adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media face double the risk of anxiety and depression symptoms. And the average daily use in this age group as of the summer of 2023 was 4.8 hours. Additionally, nearly half of adolescents say social media makes them feel worse about their bodies. And the headline of the article is, Surgeon General, why I'm calling for a warning label on social media platforms. I'm not even sure how this would work. I mean, when you buy a carton of cigarettes and you have the Surgeon General's warning on there, it's very easy to see. You just slap it on the carton there. But how would this work? Would you log on to Facebook or Twitter or TikTok and then you'd see a warning? Surgeon General's warning, social media use has been shown to have anxiety for children. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I think I'm against this. I'm curious what you think. 800-848-9222. 800-848-9222. Should social media have a warning label the way cigarettes do?
A question. Since before your sun burned hot in space and before your race was born, I have awaited a question.
Here was the Surgeon General Vivek Murthy on the Today Show yesterday with Savannah Guthrie.
Parents are struggling all over the country. I've spent time with thousands of parents over the last few years all over America. And the number one question they often ask me about is social media. They want to know, is this safe for my kids? How should I manage it? And what the data is telling us, Savannah, is not only have companies not demonstrated that their platforms are safe for kids, but there's growing evidence of harm. It shows us, in fact, that when adolescents spend more than 3 hours a day on social media, we're seeing an association with a doubling of risk of anxiety and depression symptoms. And the average amount of use per day among adolescents is nearly 5 hours. So that's deeply concerning to me, not just as Surgeon General, but as a parent myself. Now, a warning label would help parents to understand these risks. Many parents don't know that those risks exist. And we have data from tobacco warning labels that in fact tells us that they can be helpful in changing awareness and changing behavior. Keep in mind, when Congress authorized these labels for tobacco more than half a century ago, or nearly half a century ago, the smoking rate in America was above 40%. Today, it's under 12%. That's an extraordinary amount of progress. Labels were a part of that effort.
So creating a Surgeon General's warning for social media, according to the Surgeon General, is a necessary step to respond to the defining public health challenge of our time. I'm trying to work my way through this because you know what I think my issue with this is? Social media use can be, and it often is, deleterious to one's mental health. Smoking cigarettes is always deleterious to your health. Always. There's no, if you're using social media to do positive things, I don't think it will lead to increased levels of anxiety and everything else. I recognize that a lot of young people aren't, and it's a problem. And by the way, I think Vivek Murthy is coming from a very good place here. I think that he is, right on the money when it comes to loneliness. Remember, he was the one that talked about loneliness as an epidemic. But this one, I don't know. To me, it goes a little far. And, I was talking to my wife about this because she usually has a good sense for this thing, for these sort of things. And she said, look, parents should know that leaving their child to go on these devices and spend 5 hours a day on them is not good for them. They should know. And if at this point they don't know, is a warning label really going to do anything to stop them? Probably not. Probably not. So I don't know how effective this warning label would be at changing behavior. I also think, as I said, maybe it's 10% of young people, maybe it's 20%, but there are a lot of young people that use social media in a very helpful way for themselves and for others. So unlike cigarettes, which should always have a warning label because they're always bad for you, social media use could be bad. It could be good. What do you think? The Surgeon General wants a warning, a Surgeon General's warning for social media use. I tend to think it's not a good idea. 800-848-9222. Here was the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, speaking with Savannah Guthrie on the Today Show.
What has happened over the last nearly 2 decades that social media has been around is truly unconscionable when it comes to the health of our kids. We have allowed these platforms to exist, to evolve, to proliferate, to really occupy so much space in our children's lives. And our kids themselves are telling us about the mental health impact. You know, I've just finished a college tour where I spent time with young people all around our country, and they brought up social media in every engagement we had, talking about how it makes them feel worse about their body image, how it makes them feel worse about their lives as they're constantly comparing themselves to others. But here's the thing, Savannah, many of them say that they can't get off it because the platforms are often designed to maximize how much time our kids are spending on them, and despite the fact that many of them are experiencing harm.
And I understand what he's saying there. And look, I'm receptive to that. But I almost think that if that's the case, maybe you need to ban social media for young people. Maybe not. Okay. Maybe a warning label is the way to go. I just question if it's effective, if it would be effective, and if it's the right prescription here. And for reasons that I'm probably not doing a good job articulating, I'm just leaning no, even though that I recognize rampant social media use is a problem for children, but I lean no. What do you think? 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. JR is in Brooklyn. What do you make of this, JR?
Hey, good morning, Frank. Listen, it's a couple of different things. Number one, it should have a click to enter option, just like an adult website. And adult monitoring is also available for all these things. Like you said, if the parents have to be paying attention.
Sure.
It's almost like a frozen lake. So you can see kids play ice hockey on a frozen lake somewhere all day. Nothing will happen. All year, nothing will happen. You hit the wrong patch, boom, you fall through the ice. And I think it's very similar to that. And the ice gets thinner and thinner and thinner the more and more and more you're on it.
So it sounds like you think maybe the warning label is a good idea.
I think it's a good idea, number one. And I think that the social media companies would actually benefit from it, because here they are saying, hey, listen, we warned you. We listened to you. We don't really agree with you, because we're not going to say our product is bad for your mental health. But, okay, we'll play along with you. And now when you tell me you have an issue with your child because of social media, don't say we didn't warn you. We gave you the click to enter, and if your child lied about his age, or just like an adult website. You know, you after a certain point, the social media companies no longer be responsible for your actions.
You know, I get that, right? I mean, you make a good case, JR. What about what I was alluding to earlier? The fact that, yeah, I mean, I like your analogy about the ice and the tapping on the ice, and the thinner the ice gets, the more dangerous it gets. But what about what I mentioned is that some people, let's say you're a bullied child that has very few friends and no one to talk to. Maybe social media can be a means for you to express yourself in a manner that you're not comfortable doing around your peers. And it can be a way to even talk to folks that are going through something similar, finding a group for, say, stuttering teenagers that are bullied, and you're able to find a Facebook group to that effect. Doesn't that show that there is a positive use case as well for social media?
Absolutely. That's the thick part of the ice. If you're not an athlete in school, and you're not an athlete, and all the kids in your classes are athletes, you're not going to fit in. But if you find a Dungeons and Dragons page for teenagers, but here you go. You're right. That's the thick part of the ice. It's safe. It's okay, and it's beneficial without question. It's 100%, but it's not poison.
But see, that's why I bristle a little bit at throwing the same label that we put on cigarettes on social media, or the same type of warning label, because cigarettes are poison, right? They're always going to be bad for you.
Every single cigarette is designed as poison, without question.
Yeah, see,
each one is uniformed.
Yeah,
each one is uniform to do the same thing. Social media is not like that.
Right.
It's a click to enter.
Yeah, click to enter. Okay, I like that. I mean, maybe that's a good compromise there. Max in Las Vegas, listening on KDAWN. Hello, Max.
Hey, superstar. I go to group. If you, and I know you do, the Bob Newhart show. I go to group twice a day, and my shrink. And aside from that, it really shook me up when I went to a hot bar, almost a nightclub, a big bar, and 4 hot girls came in. They took out their phones, and they sat down, and they were texting each other. They never said a word to anybody. They just sat down and
it drives me crazy.
Appalling. I thought that it was like, I don't even want to hit on you girls.
Now, Max, I'm with you. Yeah. I hear you. But I recognize that, especially when we're talking about children, social media can be a very precarious thing. Do you think, as the Surgeon General does, that there should be a warning label?
There's so much bad. What I learned, superstar, 52% of America needs to to in therapy. I mean, and that's probably
what
the
percentage?
world.
62%?
52%.
52%.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's staggering. And well, I've learned so much from my shrink. You know, the classic and great movie when Al Pacino says, "I don't know who you are. We haven't investigated you." My grandfather died when my father was 3. My other grandfather. If you're going to get involved with somebody who lost a parent very early on in life, you're going to be dealing with a messed up individual. That's the first, so that's where the 52% comes from.
I totally get that. Max, thank you. I want to try and get some other people. Thank you for calling, as always. And Max seems like a nice guy, but I don't know. He kind of dodged my question on the should there be a warning label, which is kind of the heart of what Vivek Murthy is bringing to the forefront here. 800-848-9222. Matt Blaze, you have an opinion on this? Now, you're not a big social media guy, right?
No, I look at Facebook, every day, I guess, but I don't tweet out, I don't TikTok, or I don't do any of that stuff.
All right, but so you're not on there 3 hours, 4 hours a day?
No, but what I'm thinking is, did a warning label ever stop anyone from not smoking?
Well, he maintains that it has, right? He points to the statistics before that warning label went on there versus now, and he believes that it has. I'm going to play this again. And, let me play this again, and then I'll comment again.
Parents are struggling all over the country. I've spent time with thousands of parents over the last few years all over America. And the number one question they often ask me about is social media. They want to know, is this safe for my kids? How should I manage it? And what the data is telling us, Savannah, is not only have companies not demonstrated that their platforms are safe for kids, but there's growing evidence of harm. It shows us, in fact, that when adolescents spend more than 3 hours a day on social media, we're seeing an association with a doubling of risk of anxiety and depression symptoms. And the average amount of use per day among adolescents is nearly 5 hours. So that's deeply concerning to me, not just as Surgeon General, but as a parent myself. Now, a warning label would help parents to understand these risks. Many parents don't know that those risks exist. And we have data from tobacco warning labels that in fact tells us that they can be helpful in changing awareness and changing behavior. Keep in mind, when Congress authorized these labels for tobacco more than half a century ago, or nearly half a century ago, the smoking rate in America was above 40%. Today, it's under 12%. That's an extraordinary amount of progress. Labels were a part of that effort.
Or the subtext there is F you, Matt Blaze. That's what he says.
Yeah,
there.
but he's also not talking. First of all, he wants to put labels on social media. So, of course, he's going to cite those numbers. He's also not citing the fact that the education that was drilled into our heads after they banned TV commercials for cigarettes, then they banned magazine ads for cigarettes. It was drilled into our heads about don't smoke through the 70s, through the 80s, through the 90s. You think anybody looked at a pack of cigarettes who just bought a pack and go, oh, the Surgeon General warns that smoking is bad for your health? No kidding. We've known that already. It's been drilled into our heads in school every day.
But here's why I don't have an issue with the Surgeon General's warning on the cigarettes. Because, as I was saying to JR, they're all bad for you, right? Social media is probably
right. No,
bad
I'm
for
not
you.
saying that I have a problem with, but I'm saying, did it label ever
Right.
stop
So you're
anybody?
saying, like Rachel was, that it's not going to be effective.
No, it's not going to do anything. You have to know your children. And if you think your kid is a sensitive kid that's going to be affected by something on social media, or you know that your kid is being bullied on social media, then that's when you step in and say, well, your social media time is limited.
And you know what it is?
It depends on the kid.
And you know what? Everything is social media now for children. It's not just social media sites. They use video games as social media. They play video games with friends and they communicate. And by the way, adults do this too. I have adult friends that play video games with other adults and they communicate via text and audio the same way that you would in any other social media platform. And again, we're all a product of where we come from, right? So I look at the boys on the block where I live, and we're at our neighbor's house last week, and one of them is on his iPad trying to communicate with a friend, trying to play a video game or something with a friend. And my son, who's 2.5, is really into the iPad. Now, I'm trying not to make this a big thing. And also, honestly, I'm trying to get a little work done for the show. So I've got my computer out. How am I going to say, to everybody, please, I don't want my son on the computer when I've got my computer out, right? And maybe that's part of the problem, is that they've seen a normalizing of behavior among older folks. But, he's out there, the other boy, his brother's out there, Carmine's out there. There might have been one or two other children out there as well. And because there were so many children out there, it was distracting this young man from interacting with his friend on the tablet. So, and I just will never understand that. Why on a beautiful day as a child, when you could be playing outside, you're on a tablet or whatever they called an iPad and interacting with people rather than interacting with the people in real life. But he got frustrated by not being able to hear what was on the game or whatever it was he was playing, and he went inside. Now, I felt bad for that boy that he's going inside to play, but on the other hand, I was happy that my son was no longer tempted by this screen that's outside because I don't want him transfixed on the screen. So I really don't like how ubiquitous social media use seems to be among young people. But I don't know about this warning label. To Matt's point and Rachel's, I don't know how effective it's going to be. And I don't know how appropriate it is because, and this is the last time I'll mention this, cigarettes are always bad. Social media is often bad. You want a positive example of social media? Follow me on Twitter at Frank Morano, Frank Morano. Let me say hello to Mike in Woodside. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Frank, there are positive tools to be used with social media, and this is the problem that a lot of people in old media don't like. You know, where was he talking about this? He was talking about this on a TV network whose ratings are dying. So they want the labels to scare people to go back to traditional media so they can manage the message. And that is something that the Surgeon General is playing to. What the Surgeon General should do is use social media like other countries. Singapore, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia. You go over to Europe, they're using social media to educate people on public health, mental health, and other methods. It's called social communication. They teach university courses on it. You can get a master's degree on it. And government agencies all over the world are using it in a positive way. Storm warnings, any other issues, when people have problems, they tap their social media platforms because it is a way to directly communicate with people and use it positively. Is warning labels needed on some aspects of social media? Yeah, for those kids surfing on top of the 7 train, you certainly need warning labels. But that is one particular form of social media that can be damaging. So there's some good, Frank, and there's some bad, and parents have to learn to do it. Now, for Carmine, please get him some coloring books so he's not always on the iPad.
Well, we don't have an iPad, but it's just, I don't like that he sees other children with their iPad because he wants to see what they're what they're looking at. But yeah, he's got plenty of coloring books. But even if we don't have the screens, if every other child that he's interacting with has these screens, he's going to be exposed to this, which I'm not crazy about. But that's such an interesting point that Mike made. And it's one, I don't know if it has any merit to it, but it's one that I hadn't thought of, where he's saying that he's going on television to essentially decry a big competitor to television, which is in social media. It reminds me a little bit of the early days of radio, where newspapers were terrified that radio was going to take their audience. And, you know, it's one of the things that always gets pointed to with that Orson Welles War in the Worlds broadcast. If you research it, there really was not mass panic in the streets, but it was reported in the newspapers that there was mass panic in the streets. The newspapers reported it, including very supposedly credible publications, because they viewed radio as a competitor and they didn't want radio cutting into their market share. 800-848-9222. So they were doing, the newspaper people were doing to radio the same thing that he's saying that they're doing with social media now, which is interesting. Ed is in Westchester. Hi, Ed.
Hey, Frank. So I think you've got two things going on here. I think you've got distraction and content. So the content's important because certain content in social media can be harmful to the kids, but this distraction factor is just as bad. I can give you two examples. I go to the gym every day and kids are sitting on these machines doing nothing for 3 or 4 minutes at a time because they're on their phones. They're in their own world and nobody else can do anything because they're just sitting there doing nothing. And the second example is I own an event space with hundreds of kids there. And lately you spoke about kids on video games. There'll be a group of boys that are playing the same video game against each other, sitting in a group of 200 people, not talking and playing video games with each other. And it's crazy. So I think you've got two things going on. The distraction can be just as bad as the content. And as I was saying to the screener, remember TV was the same thing. When TV first came out, I'm sure they were saying, you know, here's a warning. If you plop your kid in front of the TV for 8 hours a day, your kid's going to be socially inept and not be able to function in society. So it's kind of like that also when TV first came out.
Right. And, you know, I don't remember anybody talking about a Surgeon General warning at the time when it comes to television. Very interesting, Ed. Thank you. Squeeze in one more here before we break. Joe is in Ronkonkoma. Joe, what do we think? Warning label for social media for children? Do we need it? Is it going to work?
I agree with you 100%, Frank. It's not going to work. I'm going to tell you what would work. Two options. One option, when they buy the devices for their children, they should make them sign a waiver understanding that this device is going to cause these problems because no one's going to worry about clicking. But you notice this rapid decline in cigarette smoking. The reason why is because they got to hit them in the pocket. If you want to go on these sites, if people have to stop paying for all these sites, a pack of cigarettes right now in New York City is over $20. and what's happening. People can't afford it. You think parents that can barely put food on the table are going to be able to pay for all these sites to their children? That's the way to control it. Putting a warning label, all you got to do is click and then keep going. These kids are more savvy. I don't know half the things my kids know with the internet. So they're going to be able to get around that. But I think if you hit them in the pocket and the parents are going out to buy these devices and there's a warning label when you buy the device, maybe it will hit the parent and say, wait, maybe I should buy them a book. That's what I think. Have a good night, Frank.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. This is The Other Side of Midnight, 800-848-9222. Straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Madonna singing Borderline. This is a birthday bumper music selection from our colleague and a daily contributor to this program, Dominic Carter, who is celebrating his 60th birthday today. I figured I'd get him a card. I don't know what to get him. I figured I'd get him a card and a Diet Dr. Pepper. Matt, what do you think? Did you get anything for Dominic?
I did not, but I'll sign the card.
All right, great. All right, so I'll take care of the card. I'll get the card. What about the soda stores that you're always hanging out at? Can you take care of this Diet Dr. Pepper?
Yeah, I'll get the Diet Dr. Pepper.
All right, where do you get those?
Wawa.
Wawa. Wawa. All right. Yeah, I had one the other day. I forget where I was, but it was very refreshing. Oh, I know where I was. I went, this is the day that I went to Home Depot to get the paint for Rachel. I had very specific instructions about what kind of paint to get. So I went to the paint counter and I gave them the instructions about what it needed to be. And they said, all right, well, I have to mix this up special. And it takes 15 minutes. So Carmine and I walk around the store. He was looking for a car to buy. He thinks every store sells cars. When his babysitter, who was kind enough to watch him yesterday, was taking him out, I don't know where they were. I think they went to I don't know where they were, but they're in a shopping center, and he leads her to the drugstore that we go to because he knows they sell cars there. And she bought him a car. But this kid, he's drawn to cars like a moth to a flame. And he gets very disappointed whenever any store doesn't sell cars. Now, meanwhile, I know Home Depot doesn't sell cars. And I told him, he says, can I get a car? And I said, no. Well, I said, if they have cars there, you can get one. I don't think they do, but if they have one, you can get one. And he says, no, I think they do. I don't think they do. And sure enough, I was right. But they did sell Diet Dr. Pepper. So I did purchase one, and it was quite refreshing. I must say, I could see why they're number 2. All right. So speaking of Carmine, yesterday I was waiting to testify at the latest Charter Revision Commission hearing via Zoom. And I was waiting, and I forget what else I was doing. I was doing 2 or 3 things simultaneously. But I was inside, and I'm at our kitchen table because my wife was loading the bird feeder with bird seed and watering all of her plants. And Carmine was in the backyard with her. So after she was done with her work day. So I don't know. I usually go into my office when I have Zoom meetings or things like that. But for whatever reason, I was at the kitchen table because that's where I was working from. And then figure, all right, the computer's here. Let me just do the Zoom meeting from here. And then I hear a little bit of a hullabaloo. I hear that they're back in the house. And now I'm speaking. I only have a few minutes to give my commentary. And they're making noise and stuff. And I went into my office and I hear my wife trying to say to Carmine, shh, Daddy's talking. And I go into the office even while I'm talking so that they can make noise and stuff. And then I go into the backyard and my wife says, I wouldn't mind him being distracted if you want to take him somewhere, maybe in the garage or for a walk, wherever, for reasons that I'll tell you later. So anyway, a little later, maybe an hour or so after we are doing our thing, I take him for a walk. A little later, she tells me that in our backyard, which is now teeming with birds, it's a bird buffet back there. There's birds and birds and birds, all kinds of birds. Yesterday, a cardinal was coming to visit. I'm not talking about the baseball player, but it's an actual bird, not even a religious figure. It's funny. I once asked my Uncle John, how do you become a cardinal? He tells me, well, you go to spring training and you try out. And I said, no. I said, a religious cardinal. And he said, oh, well, you just pray before you try out. But this was an actual bird. So it was nice to see. Nice to see him enjoying all that birdseed. So anyway, Carmine and my wife are out there in the backyard, and he finds a dead bird, and he sees it. And he says, Mommy, what's this? And she didn't want to, at this point, have a whole discussion about life and death. And so she tells him something to the effect of, oh, this bird is sick. He's got a very bad boo-boo. And Carmine says, oh, should we get him a Band-Aid? And then she says, well, I think he even may need to go to the doctor. He's very, very sick and very hurt. And that's why she was wanting me to distract him and take him out there, because she didn't want to continue this conversation about this dead bird. And I don't blame her. So she made arrangements while I was playing with Carmine elsewhere to, I don't know what she did with the bird, but she took it out of visual range, and then Carmine didn't bring it up again. So we'll see. But that was yesterday was his first experience with a dead bird. I don't think he touched it. I wasn't present for this. I got all this secondhand. But I said to my wife, I hope that he didn't die, and I wasn't joking about this, fighting with the other birds over this bird seed, because these birds are fired up about this bird seed. I don't know what's in this bird seed, but they are feasting on this stuff. I've said that expression, eat like a bird, is meaningless. These birds don't stop eating. These birds eat like they each have a tapeworm. 800-848-9222. Hey, I got an email here. This is from Frankie in Glendale, who's a great guy. He is recuperating from a medical procedure, so he can't call in. But he said, if a simple label can save one child's life, it's worth it. He says, as you know, I lost my 15-year-old son because of an online challenge. Now, I agree with that. If a label can save anyone's life, I think it's great. My question is, does it? Does it save anyone's life? And the answer is, I don't think so. But I'm open to this, right? If Surgeon General Murthy can make a compelling case that it does, okay, I'm open to it. I'm already predisposed to not liking youth use of social media. So if a Surgeon General's warning is going to make a difference, great. I'm just not convinced it does. 800-848-9222 if you want to comment. 800-848-9222. Bill is in Connecticut. Hi, Bill.
Hello, Frank. Just want to let you know my wife and I, when we're up, enjoy your show very much. That being said, I'm 78 years old. I have 4 children. I have 10 grandchildren, all the way up to 21 years old. And the youngest is about 6 months. Listen to your stories about your 2-year-old son, Carmine. And I don't know the effectiveness of the Surgeon General's warning. That I don't know. What I do know is that the social media does have a dramatic effect on my grandkids. And it depends on the grandchild as to how much of an effect it has. Only point I want to make to you is forget about the toy cars. He's going to get over it. But something that's very difficult to get over is the social media. And it affects my grandchildren very differently depending on their makeup. I haven't watched it yet, but just yesterday, I was with my daughter and her granddaughter, and they were suggesting watching, and I'm suggesting to you that you watch, which I have not watched yet, a documentary called Social Dilemma.
Yeah, I've seen it. And I talked about it at the time that I saw it. It's quite good.
Is it good?
Very good.
I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, no, I've seen it.
Keep up the good work. We enjoy you. We enjoy your interaction with Curtis. And I just wanted to share that with you.
Right. Well, I'm not familiar with him, but I appreciate the feedback nonetheless. Yeah, that is quite good. The Social Dilemma, it's very good. It's on the Netflix. But, and you know, it's funny. I invited the filmmaker on the show, I think. He never got back to me, but that's fine. But the director of that is actually the son of a teacher that I had in high school, which I had no idea when I watched that this was the son of a teacher that I had. But that was interesting. All right. 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
This is a birthday bumper music selection from my friend and colleague Dominic Carter, who is the big 6-0 today. 60, a milestone birthday if ever there was one. Happy birthday, Dominic. Very, very much enjoy having Dominic on this program on a daily basis as well. Hey, you know, it's funny. I just got an email about this, but I had this on my list to bring to your attention anyway. Here is the latest with Voyager 1. And I've covered this in some of my previous conversations with Dr. Sky. But to me, this is one of the most fascinating things out there, period. Voyager 1 is the farthest man-made object from Earth. Isn't that interesting? The farthest man-made object from Earth. It is now fully back online and sending data from all 4 of its instruments. This space probe, which is 15 billion miles or 22 light hours from home, suffered a glitch in November and started sending back nonsense. NASA managed partial fixes in April and May and then achieved full science operations over the weekend. The Voyagers launched in 1977 on a planned 5-year mission. 5 years. But after 47 years, it's still working. Now outside the solar system's boundaries and sending info about interstellar space. And if you've seen Star Trek The Motion Picture, which is not the best of those Star Trek films. In fact, I didn't even make my wife watch it. I had her start with Star Trek 2. And I think if you're introducing the Star Trek films to someone for the first time, you can skip that one. But there is a key plot point involving one of these Voyager probes in that film, which is kind of interesting. But it has a lot of other problems in the film. All right. What is sad, though, about the Voyager 1 situation, it's great that it's still transmitting a half century after it was launched. But Ed Stone, who directed the Voyager project for 50 years, from 1972 to 2022, he did not live to see this. He died on June 9th at the age of 88. So when it got fully operational again last weekend, Ed Stone unfortunately wasn't around. But God bless you, Ed Stone, and thank you for everything that you've done for the sake of space exploration. All right, 800-848-9222. We're talking about this proposal by the Surgeon General to slap a warning label on social media use, specifically for youth use of social media. 800-848-9222. Melvin is in Indianapolis. Hi, Melvin.
How you doing, Frank? About your son, Carmen, I have a great computer for him. I had one in 1957. You heard me correctly, 1957. It was called Etch-a-Sketch. No batteries. It always worked. My parents put it on my lap, and they put me in the back of the car, so it was a laptop.
Yeah, he has an Etch-a-Sketch. He likes it.
You have to use your brain, and it's very good for coordination.
Mm-hmm.
So, that more kids need to have that today than these stupid computers.
Yeah, again, we don't have a computer for him, Melvin, so you're preaching to the choir.
The other thing I want to tell you about your other associate that had the birthday.
Yes.
I listen to him all the time. The name came off my head.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either.
I've been holding on.
Yeah.
I just want him to know that only young people get old. Are you aware of that?
I guess so. Yeah, I mean...
And do you know what happens to old people?
Well, eventually they die.
No, they get more experience.
Oh, all right, Melvin.
Tell that to your mother. She'll feel good.
There you go, Melvin. Thank you. Appreciate the call and the wisdom. Melvin's one of these guys that he loves to throw that twist at you. That's okay. It's okay. We like that. We like that he's listening. I feel bad that he didn't remember Dominic's name, but okay, fine. Joaquin is in Pennsylvania. What's on your mind, Joaquin?
You know what? The Surgeon General's thing to a young guy, that's probably like a shiny object that's going to just attract him because the man is telling them not to do it.
The forbidden fruit syndrome.
Yes. Hey, have you ever been to Sagamore Hill in Oyster Bay?
No, you've asked me this, and I have not been there.
You have to go there.
I will.
And, that was originally why I called. I mean, that man was just incredible. And, he started off as a sickly young, guy. And he brought himself to health, and he went out west, I guess, actually for his health. And he did so many things. It was just amazing. And you're right. I don't know how many lifetimes this guy lived.
Yeah, if people are just tuning in, we're talking about Theodore Roosevelt because somebody had asked me for a book recommendation. Joaquin, I can't argue with you, and we're on the same page on this one. But that's on my list of places to check out. I absolutely will. Thank you, Joaquin. All right, 800-848-9222. If, in spite of what the Surgeon General has said, you still want to go on social media, then please be sure to follow me on Twitter at Frank Morano. That's Frank Morano. You know, one of the things that I didn't get to mention last week when it was announced is on Twitter, they're now going to allow nudity and other not safe for work content. I'm curious to see what that does to the platform, if it just becomes a porn platform now, or if it'll be, I don't know, somewhat regulated. We'll see. All right. In the words of the great Bob Grant, your influence counts. Use it.
This is The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
They're running a strange program, y'all.
Now, here's Frank Morano.
Good morrow, everyone. This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Superstar Frank Morano, and that moniker, Superstar, in part, it's a designation from a casino because I achieved superstar status. I have to check on that, actually. I have to make sure before I run around calling myself Superstar that I still have that. But in part, it is a tribute to the late, great superstar Billy Graham, who was a legendary professional wrestler. And professional wrestling is not quite a sport, but it is sports entertainment, and it involves many of the aspects of sports that people find thrilling. And when I was a child, I was a big sports fan. I primarily baseball, but I enjoyed all sports. As I've gotten older, I'm still quite fond of baseball, but I am by no means obsessed with it the way I was when I was a child. In fact, that's how I really fell in love with talk radio, primarily, is I would go to bed listening to baseball, and the stations that would carry the baseball games that I would listen to on the radio, I would wake up hours later and get exposed to all this great talk programming in the middle of the night. My mom never had cable, so the only way for me to watch a lot of these games was on the radio. And even when I would stay at my dad's and they did have cable, I would still not be allowed to watch television in my room necessarily. I would have to rely on the radio, which I was happy to do. I love the radio. I think baseball, more than almost any other sport, is perfectly conducive to radio. Now, as I've gotten older, my interest in sports has diminished significantly. I still watch as many Met games as I can. It's a lot easier now to watch these baseball games, whatever team you happen to be a fan of, because the games are shorter. And I was somebody that was critical of most of these changes that baseball has made. I think I still hate the ghost runner. I still hate the DH in both leagues. I think that most of the other changes have been a positive, and they have resulted in shorter games. Okay. I really have lost the desire to go to live sporting events. I used to love to go to as many professional baseball games as I can. These days, I have no desire to go to any of these professional sporting events. The exception being minor league games and independent league games. I still enjoy going to see the Ferry Hawks or the Cyclones because it's a different experience than going to a major league game. It's much more intimate. And it's much more friendly, cozy atmosphere. I'm not into these large scale football or baseball games anymore. I'm not. In fact, a couple of years ago, I was offered at work the opportunity to go to the All-Star game, a baseball All-Star game, and I turned it down. It was I forget where it was, but I didn't want to make the trip. And I figured the amount of effort that it would take to enjoy these tickets would not have been worth the hassle. The enjoyment I'd get from it wouldn't be worth it. And so I was thinking to myself as I turned those tickets down that how much I would be kicking myself if I was 10 and I knew that the adult me turned down tickets to an All-Star game. So it's caused me to do a great deal of thinking about sports and why we watch sports. Because even though I watch it a lot less, I just saw on the screen a little while ago that the Mets beat the Texas Rangers 14-2 last night. And I couldn't help but get really excited. I don't know if it's just something that's hardwired in me at this point it's like Pavlov's dog when I see a big Met victory. And I see them scoring 14 runs, especially up until recently when they've been struggling. It's something that's really a jolt of energy. But why? It's a bunch of young men playing a game. I'm not playing it. Why do I care about the outcome? So I've been thinking a lot about this because if you listen to the Jerry Seinfeld comedy routine on this, what he says is exactly right.
Loyalty to any one sports team is pretty hard to justify because the players are always changing. The team can move to another city. You're actually rooting for the clothes when you get right down to it. You know what I mean? You are standing and cheering and yelling for your clothes to beat the clothes from another city. Fans will be so in love with a player, but if he goes to another team, they boo him. This is the same human being in a different shirt. They hate him now. Boo! Different shirt. Boo.
And look, he's right. David G. Allen wrote a commentary for CNN that a listener named Tom sent me. The headline really says it all. I just don't get watching sports. That's what he writes. The NBA finals are about to start, or so I'm told. It's usually these professional sport holidays. And by the way, congratulations to the Celtics for winning the NBA championship, where I'm cornered into admitting I'm sports agnostic. One summer afternoon in a Brooklyn park while cheering on my daughter at a Pee Wee softball game, another dad approached me because of the hat I was wearing, a Baltimore Orioles cap. He asked me if I'd seen last night's game. No, I was an Orioles fan as a kid, but I don't follow them now. And then he proceeded to recount in vivid detail the details of the Orioles game. And, basically, this guy writes, I'm not anti-sports. I know participating in them offers legitimate physical, mental, and social benefits. I've enjoyed playing sports. Yes, some are violent and brain injuring, and I wish they'd phase out so people weren't paid to flirt with dementia. But I was in a boxing league as a kid myself, and it was great for me, practically therapy. It's the watching, and again, I want to make clear, this is David Allen speaking, not me. It's the watching and caring about professional sports as an adult that eludes my understanding. At the end of one Super Bowl, an event I will often skip unless invited to a party, my friend Jesse cried when his hometown team lost. I felt badly for him, but was also puzzled and a bit unnerved by his emotions. This is a sport with professionals who are literally just playing a game. There's even a pause in the middle for a song and dance number. I wondered what bearing did the loss of his team have on him as an adult? He's exactly right. He's exactly right. So I've been thinking about this. Why do any of us care about sports? Woody Allen There was a documentary about him maybe, 10 years ago. It's available on Amazon, I think, unless his cancellation is complete. And I want you to listen to the question that the interviewer asks him and his response. And it has to do with this.
If you could never watch another movie again, current movie or old movie, never see a sporting event again for the rest of your life, which of the two would you sacrifice?
At this point, I would sacrifice movies. Because they really are not the same as when I grew up. But sporting events remain thrilling.
Also, past movies. You could never put on an old movie again. Still the same deal?
It would be a great loss, but I think I could live without them.
That, to me, was so interesting. Here you have someone whose life has been, aside from comedy, the cinema. 50 plus motion pictures made. He lives to consume motion pictures, or at least did. And he would pick sports over movies. And I was listening to, I think it was Sid Rosenberg a few weeks ago. And I forget, it was in the midst of some sporting issue. Maybe it was the NHL playoffs, maybe it was the NBA, I don't know. But he said to the audience, I know a lot of you don't care about sports, but you should. And that really struck me because I thought it was interesting. Because ultimately, it makes sense to care about who the president is, or who the mayor is, or who the governor is. Because those guys are making decisions in some cases about life and death, about what countries we're bombing, about what police are on the street, about how your children are going to be educated. If the Mets win 162 games or they lose 162 games, it doesn't have any effect on me or anybody else, unless you're one of those players. So why do we care about sports? And why should we care? Because in thinking about this, I have come to the conclusion that I do think it's a positive to care about sports. And the best that I could come up with is that it's a pleasant distraction. It's nice to be able to take a break from the rigmarole of everything that is bad about the world and about society and watch a game that affects you not at all for 90 minutes. And as far as the Jerry Seinfeld bit, which is right on the money about rooting for laundry, I guess the thing that makes rooting for a city's team makes sense, to me anyway, is that you feel like you're in the trenches with somebody. You feel like you and all the other fans of your sport team, whether it's the Cardinals, whether it's the Orioles, whether it's the Twins, whether it's the Mets, you're in it together. And it fosters a sense of camaraderie. So that's my best guess. But in reading this David G. Allen piece, because this came up in the Facebook group recently, how folks mentioned, they watched sports as a kid, but would never dream of watching it as an adult. It got me wondering, why should we? Or why shouldn't we? Doesn't make any difference. 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Let me know what you think. Norman is in Brooklyn. Hi, Norman.
Hey, Frank. Seinfeld's wrong. Basically, we're not rooting for the clothes, okay? Proof of that would be when the Brooklyn Dodgers moved from Brooklyn to L.A., they wore the same clothes, other than they went from a B to an L.A., but nobody here in Brooklyn was rooting for the Dodgers when they went to L.A., similar to when the Baltimore Colts went from Baltimore, they went to Indianapolis in football, and nobody rooted for them in Baltimore when they went to Indianapolis. Okay, we root for sports because of clan, because of our tribe. That's it. It becomes our tribe. So my tribe happens to be the Yankees. So that's what I root for. That is my tribe, and I root for them. Okay,
right,
and that's it.
So why? Why does it matter if the Yankees win or lose?
Well, it means a lot less to me as I'm getting older. But it's a distraction from its distraction from thinking about open borders, Israel, the world, all the economic problems here in America and in my own life. It is a distraction.
Right, and that's kind of what I was saying, and that I think that makes sense, right? Is that it gives people an escape for a little bit, and gives them a little bit of a respite from worrying about this stuff. Thanks, Norman. Appreciate that. That makes sense. And I think Norman cited kind of the same two things that I came up with, which is, and he phrased it a bit differently, but it fosters a sense of camaraderie among other people that are rooting for that team. And it gives you a break from worrying about inflation and oil prices and war and this and that. Makes sense. 800-848-9222. Max is in Brooklyn. Hi, Max.
Well, let me tell you something. The fact that you want to be busy with and you don't want to worry about those things, that doesn't make it that it matters to you that you win. That's just keeping you distracted. Whether they win or lose, it's still distracting you. Well, I'm explaining to you why it matters that you win. It matters that you win because, let's say I live in a city, right? I take pride over my city. Let's say I live in New York. I take pride over the Freedom Tower. I take pride. I like that my city is doing good. I like when they build new skyscrapers in my city, and everything's doing good. So when my city wins, I take pride over that also, because it's like my city and it's my home, and I'm like they got to do good. It's like, you get what I'm saying?
I think I do, Max, but now I understand the pride in the Freedom Tower. I understand the pride in your city accomplishing great things, but it's not as if the players that are playing for your city's sports teams are from here. They're owned by a team owner that traded for them or signed them. They don't really have anything to do with the fabric of the city.
Yeah, that's true, but they're still playing for your city. Mm-hmm. This is your city. They're your team. They're the ones that you go to the game for, and that's your pride. I'm saying it's your city, and I take pride over every part of New York, and this is one of the things I take pride over. When the Knicks were doing good, I was very happy because this is my city, and the Knicks are doing good. That's good. When the Rangers are doing good this season also, I was very happy because this is my city, and I take pride over that. And if they're going to win, I'm going to take pride over that because this is my city.
Max, thank you. I appreciate that. 800-848-9222. We got a couple of Joes on the line, and we're going to talk with Noam Laden in just a moment. Joe in South Jersey, what are your thoughts? Why do we root for sports? Why does it matter? Why do I, with everything I have going on in my life, still get excited when I see the Mets beat the Rangers 14-2?
We are the champions of the world. You're part of it. You're part of the team. You get to associate yourself, commit yourself to a cause. It's great. Sports is a wonderful thing. And when played correctly and everything else, it's one of the few honorable things left. But no, I love it. But I want to be, associate with champions, having, something to root for.
Yeah, I like it, Joe. I like it a lot. And by the way, as a Met fan, I could tell you there's a certain amount of camaraderie that comes with being part of a losing team effort. Because as a Met fan, with only two exceptions, that inevitably this season is going to end in disappointment. Because they all end in disappointment, with the exception of two. So there's something about experiencing collective trauma with other fans of your team. There's something nice about it. I know that sounds bizarre, but it does bring you together. It really does. Another Joe, this time in the Queens. Hi, Joe.
Yeah, I think some of it's ingrained from your youth and they keep it going forward. But I did listen to the Met game, and there's like a fabric of history to it, because they were talking about they had 22 hits. They said the most they've had it as a team in a 9-inning game is 25, so they came close to that, and 28 in a 19-inning game, which is years back. So that then they talked about a team in '64. They had a couple of 20-hit games when they lost. So it's almost like this is like a connection, like music can be, to prior eras. I think that's part of it, too.
I like that. The history and the traditions. I like that.
You know, it's something that you can relate to from the 60s, just like you could relate to a band from the 60s. So I think that's part of it for me, you know.
I like that, Joe. That makes sense. Jeffrey in the Queens, what do you think?
Hey, Frank, this is a very interesting development here. Listen to this. On the Tunnel to Tower commercial, you hear that Frank talking to Matt Damon, and they say the rivalry between Boston and New York has been squashed since the towers went down, right? So that speaks to the whole issue of how, men have over-identified to the point where they would fight with the rival teams. It's one thing to, hate in a friendly way your rival team, the rivalry, but not to be, take it too far and actually fight. So there's Frank and...
we lost you there, Jeffrey. We didn't cut you off. I don't know. What happened? The phone's there. All right. The phone's glitched out on us. All right, so be it. It's funny that you said that, how sports breaks down barriers. When I was cooking dinner on Saturday, I made my famous peanut butter noodles for my wife. It felt bad. She was sunburned, and we were both tired. And before we watched The Hitman, I made these peanut butter noodles. And while I'm making the meal, did we lose internet too? No? Okay. While I'm making the meal, I put on in the background, some C-SPAN videos. And you want to know the greatest website that exists? It's cspan.org, because they have this video search feature. I've talked about it before. I won't belabor the point, where you can type in anyone that's been featured on C-SPAN ever, and it'll bring you the video of their appearance. It's incredible. I mean, this is why the internet exists, for cspan.org. And anyway, let me put on an old Pat Buchanan video, because I do miss talking to Pat Buchanan on the air. He's retired now, and we haven't really corresponded by phone lately anyway. So I get nostalgic for hearing him, hearing his perspective, hearing his voice, hearing kind of where he was warning about different things going on in the world. So I type in Pat Buchanan's name, and I find, and I had actually watched this before about 10 years ago, and I realized it as soon as I started watching it, but I found an interview that he did with Ralph Nader. C-SPAN used to do this great thing. I don't think they do it anymore, where they would have authors, and in this case, Pat Buchanan had written a book called Suicide of a Superpower, Will America Survive Until 2025? And they have an author interviewed by another famous person, and this time it was Ralph Nader. And I love listening to those two speak in every exchange, and there's not enough of them. I wish they had a show together, but this was one exchange. They speak for an hour about Pat's thesis in the book and things like that. But it's so interesting to hear them, because even though they have some differing political views, Pat's obviously conservative, Ralph is on the left, they really do view so many of the different things happening in the world the same way. And they get to the cleavages in society, the kind of thing that we talk about all the time, the socioeconomic differences between people, the breakdown among race, among religion, among political views. And Pat and Ralph, I don't know how they got to this, but they both talk about how the one thing that brings everybody together, rich and poor, black and white, Democrat and Republican, old and young, is sports. And how you can have two people from very different backgrounds, and if they're both fans of the same football team, they're going to have something to talk about. And I thought it was such an astute, and then Ralph mentioned some other cultural aspects of things that kind of bring people together. And I thought it was such an astute observation that the two of them made. And I think it is true. I think sports largely is something that can, at its best, serve to be unifying. So they agree with you, I think. I think that's what you were about to say, Jeff, before the phone gods decided that you shouldn't say it. All right. We'll try and get to you. Give us a call just so we know the phones are working, actually. 800-848-9222. Noam Laden is here. We know he's working. He's always working. He's our news director. He's going to bring us the news straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
By the Culture Club. This is a birthday bumper music selection from the one and only Dominic Carter, who is celebrating his 60th birthday today. Happy birthday, Dominic. I had no idea he was such a Culture Club fan, but apparently he is. Somebody who also is a Culture Club enthusiast, although I've known about his fandom of this group for many years, is the one and only Noam Laden.
Stand by for the other side of Midnight's news.
From New York City, The Other Side of Midnight and its affiliated stations present national and international news with Frank Morano and news director Noam Laden. Their summary of the world news and personal comments. Get the rest of the story.
What's going on now?
Good morning, Frank. I'm surprised as well to hear Dominic Carter is a Boy George fan.
Full of surprises.
Really
Dominic Carter.
shocking.
Full of surprises.
But now I know both of us can start our own fan club right here at the radio station.
There you go. You should.
Do you know Graham Parker?
Well, I know that name. Why do I know that name?
So Graham Parker is one of the biggest guys on YouTube. And if you haven't been watching him, you're one of the millions that should be tuning in because he has tens of millions of followers. And he's not your usual YouTube guy. He's not playing video games. Those guys are really popular where you watch other people play video games. Those are huge. Then there's the pranksters online that do very well, that get big numbers. But Graham Parker is a guy from Scotland, the southwest of Scotland, beautiful countryside. He was a person who was freeze branding cows. That was his job. He was the guy who would brand cows in town. And then his stepfather, in an untimely fashion, passed away. And he had a business where he would shave the hooves of cows, which is apparently an incredible art form and something that's really needed. So he came back home to take over the family business. And when he did, he started shooting videos of him doing this process. Part of it was because he wanted other people who do this, which is not a huge number of people, to see if his technique was correct. So he would take videos of him shaving the hooves of cows. He would upload them to YouTube. And he said, after the first year, which is only 3 or 4 years ago, he had about 1,000 views. And then he noticed all of a sudden the numbers increased big time. And he saw that people were sending him questions who clearly were not in the farm industry. Mm-hmm. Well, now, 3 years later, he has some of his videos, which he puts up a couple times a week, have 100 million views.
Whoa.
Yeah. He has a whole side business of creating these videos that makes him way more money than actually cleaning the hooves of cows. But he continues to do that because he has a love for it. And the thought is people are just First of all, it doesn't hurt that he's a good-looking guy. Happens to be a very good-looking guy. The countryside is beautiful. You're watching these farm animals who clearly like having their hooves cleaned. He's walking you through the process. He also has one of these accents that's a little hard to understand, so I think that's part of the appeal as well.
Every single day of the week, people are contacting us to ask how to do this or how to do that, how we can help them, or just to say how we've kind of helped them in their lives, even although they're not in agriculture, which is something I never expected to happen, but has been a really humbling and incredibly kind of endearing thing.
So he can't explain it. He doesn't understand why people are so fascinated by it, but he has 7 million followers now. The average video, again, gets about 100 million views within a short period of time once he's posted it. And business is so brisk on YouTube. He's keeping his hooves business because that's the family business. But business is so brisk on YouTube that he's now hired 5 people, a crew of people, including a film person, a PR person, to follow him around as he's in business every day.
That is extraordinary. Good for this guy. I don't think he sounded difficult. I don't think his accent was difficult to understand.
If you go, I found a clean sentence.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. I will check it out. Then.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you know the Scottish accent, then you can understand him. But I found some of it to be like, huh? What did he just say?
Okay.
Yeah. McDonald's is going to end its AI-powered automated drive-through order-taking experiment. So what they did is they wanted to use AI to take the orders because that's one less employee that you need behind the window of McDonald's. And they tried this at about 100 locations. They partnered with IBM on this pilot program, started about 2 years ago at the select franchises across the country, just in the U.S., and the gaffes have been just huge. And so now, yesterday, they sent an email out to their franchises that are using this AI bot to take in the orders at the drive-thru, and they said, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to pull it down. They haven't given up on it. But if you go to TikTok, it is amazing to see the mistakes that this AI program has made over the last 2 years. One of them is a woman ordered sweet tea, and that was it. And she came up to the window, and they gave her 9 sweet teas. Another guy wanted ice cream. He got an ice cream cone topped with bacon. There was another person who entered a drive-thru and said she wanted vanilla ice cream without caramel. Instead, she got ice cream with cream packets on top. Because the people were just following the orders. And then there's these crazy things where people ordered like chicken nuggets and they came up to the window and their bill was $220 because somehow it took the order as they wanted hundreds upon hundreds of chicken nuggets. So now they yanked off the AI bot, or they will in the coming days for the different drive-through windows that are doing this. McDonald's wants you to know that they're going back to IBM. They're not giving up on this. They're going to perfect it because they say they can. They say they're not worried that eventually they'll be able to roll this out and it'll be seamless, but it was anything but seamless for McDonald's.
That is really interesting. You know, I have not been to a McDonald's in many years, but my son's babysitter took him there yesterday to a McDonald's she had actually worked at as a young person, and she told me that if you go in there, everything is automated. I don't think it was AI, but there were no people in there. I think wow. And then my wife, who goes to Taco Bell, she said that is very, very common in a lot of these fast food restaurants. Apparently, even when it's not AI, there is a situation where you just kind of push buttons and they bring you your order. Now, I don't know if that's going to change with this new protocol that McDonald's is adopting, but I think it's a shame that all these places seem to be going more in automation and AI direction, although it seems like McDonald's is going to at least have more humans play a role. Yeah, well, you know, they had this fast food chain here in the city that when you went up to the counter, there was a TV screen. The TV screen came on, a live person took your order, but that person was back in the Philippines. So, do you remember that? Yes. And they're still using it. Apparently it's successful. It's a small chain. The name escapes me right now, but they have somebody in the Philippines taking your orders who's sitting at home. You know what I am kind of excited about, though? And I guess this is an early form of automation. You remember the automat?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so there was a great documentary about the Automat a few years ago, which I can't recommend highly enough. We had the filmmaker on this show, and she was great. But the Automat with Horn and Hardit, which was the premier Automat, they're coming back. I was listening to the Cats Roundtable on Sunday, and John had on the guy that's bringing back the Automat. And I don't know why I bristle when a lot of these other restaurants are going in an AI direction, but then I'm also nostalgic for an aspect of automation that was ubiquitous.
Yeah,
at the time.
there was nothing more exciting because it went out like in the 80s, I think. And I remember going up and you'd say, you'd push the window open, get a slice of lemon meringue pie, a tuna sandwich that was a couple days old. So
actually, 1991.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Closed,
I remember in the 80s they still had them in the city.
Yeah, I'm excited that they're coming back. Yeah, the last one in Manhattan was right over there. It was
really?
on, I think, 42nd and 2nd or 40. Yeah, right around
that sounds
there.
right.
Yeah, but that's kind of interesting. But we'll see what McDonald's is doing just fine. Clearly.
Another statue of the Virgin Mary is apparently begun to cry tears of blood. This is in Mexico at a church, Our Lady of Guadalupe. She it sparked great interest. It is in the town of Morlia. And this is interesting. I did not know this, and maybe you did, and I'm just behind the times. When there are Virgin Marys that begin to cry, or sometimes tears, in this case, tears of blood, the archdiocese in some of these towns comes in to check it out for themselves to see if it's real. So in the case of this latest Virgin Mary, which has just happened in the last couple of weeks, a family owns the statue. They can't believe it. It is crying these tears of blood. They will not give out the exact location of this church because, of course, what happens of this statue, what happens is, tens of thousands of people sometimes will then go to this neighborhood or to this church to see it for themselves. And the Archdiocese of Morlia says they have not had a chance to check this statue out, so they're refusing to give the location, and the family has actually kept quiet. But we are looking at pictures. I saw a video this morning, and it does look like this Virgin Mary statue is crying tears of blood.
Wow. Now, some of these incidents have been debunked of, Virgin Mary's crying tears of blood, but a lot of them haven't, right? I mean, there's been a lot of these sites that have become, sites that become tourist attractions, essentially, or pilgrimage sites. So I'm curious to see where this goes. How much of an investigation do they do into this kind of a thing?
Oh, it's a serious investigation. They don't take this lightly because they are believers at the end of the day. And they say, it's a possibility. This is legit. But they also say there's a possibility that maybe these people are doing something. They've manipulated the statue to make it cry tears of blood.
I just looked up other incidents like this, and I found in 1953 in Sicily, one of the most, and I remember this case as soon as I saw it, one of the most famous cases occurred of this in the home of Angelo Iannuso and his wife Antonina, where a plaster statue of the Virgin Mary reportedly wept tears of blood. And the event attracted thousands of pilgrims, and it was later recognized by the Catholic Church as a genuine miracle after, they did scientific analysis. So we'll see.
Yeah, and they really do scientific analysis. They don't take it lightly. They'll go in there and experiment with it, look over the statue, and then if it's legit, they'll tell you it is.
Yeah, I wonder if they can tell what kind of blood type that is, if it's blood.
It's a great question. We'll follow. We'll see what happens. As of yesterday, they had not done their investigation.
Well, I'm sure there's been a lot of hoaxes with this kind of thing as well, but I'm eager to see where this goes. You got to keep us posted.
Of course. WestJet, the airline, if you want to be treated poorly as a second-class citizen, you might want to take the WestJet airline. They have a new bottom-tiered economy fare. It's called Ultra Basic. This is this new thing where they're trying to find different ways of maybe if you've recently tried to get a ticket like on United or any airline. I don't mean to point out United. They have all these different things you can do to lower your fare. No suitcase. You can't have a drink. I don't know. Maybe no bathroom privileges. Whatever it is, they're trying to figure out a way to get the cheap fare. So this new fare class, which has unleashed a storm of online backlash, is an attempt to kill two birds with one stone. So it's designed to expedite the boarding process, and the airline says provide our most competitive pricing. So you might guess you can't bring a bag online, you can't check a bag, and the price is about 2/3 less than what everybody else on the plane is paying.
Okay.
So if you do show up with a suitcase, they will automatically charge you $137, which is a lot of money for the extra suitcase.
It did.
Automatic,
that's for sure.
And it probably brings you close to whatever the original fare was. You can't do that. They also say you can't get an assigned seat, so you have no idea where you're going to sit. When it comes to boarding, you board dead last. You are not allowed to board until everybody else has boarded, and then they'll call out, ultra basic passengers, you can now board. You are the last to board. Whatever seats are available, those are the ones you'll get. Likely it'll be in the very back of the plane right next to the bathroom.
For how much do we think?
2/3 off the price.
Okay.
Which is a lot, 2/3 off the price.
Would you fly this airline?
No.
No, I don't think I would either. I'll pay. I mean, do you get a carry-on?
You don't get anything. Nothing.
Okay.
And if you show up in any of those things, bang, they hit you hard with that $137 fee. They can't wait to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I not for me.
Yeah.
But
by the way, there was an airline, and I'll end with this, in the UK, one of these low-cost carriers that applied to do an airline where everyone would be standing up like you are on a subway. It was like a strap hanger thing where you would stand up. You would have like a board behind you so you could have, it would brace you as you fly, and then you would have a strap above you to hold on to when things got rocky on the plane. And of course, the thought is if you're standing up on the flight, you can fit a ton more passengers on the airplane. There'd be no food service, no drinks. This was for short-term flights, and they actually really applied for what the equivalent is of the FAA in the UK to get this done, but they turned them down.
Thank goodness. But, I remember it was a big deal for a while, and I'm sure you reported on a lot of these stories, where I've never been to Boston, but I always wanted to go. And congratulations again to the Celtics on winning their NBA championship. But I would hear about these bus lines that would go from Chinatown in Manhattan to Chinatown in Boston for something like either $10 or $15 per person. And I had friends that would take these, that they would go to college in Boston, or had friends that would go to college in Boston. And they said that they would just cram as many people as possible in there, but it was still worth it for them because they didn't have a lot of money, and you'd get to Boston. But these buses kept getting into accidents. There were all sorts of shenanigans.
There were people who didn't have driver's licenses, or they were suspended driver's licenses, but they were letting these people get behind a bus with 7,500 people
So I think
aboard.
they put a stop to that, but that's basically the airline equivalent of what they were doing with these Chinatown buses.
Look, if you need to get from point A to point B and you don't have a lot of cash, these are great options. You're willing to put up with all that.
Well, I don't know if they're great options, but
decent
they're options.
Yeah.
They're options.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Thank you, Noam.
And now you know the rest of the story.
Do you know who is going to North Korea today? Vladimir Putin. Yes, that's right. The Russian President Vladimir Putin is arriving in North Korea today to meet with the country's leader, Kim Jong-un, as the two seek to strengthen and expand their relationship. But, I wish I would have said something earlier. Oh, that's right, I did. I really think turning Russia into an international pariah has only served to drive her closer to America's enemies. Maybe I haven't commented on Russia in a long time, but maybe we'll do a segment on Russia tomorrow, because a lot of you have written to me with questions about what we're doing now and the failure of this peace summit. But this 2-day visit marks Putin's first trip to North Korea in 24 years and comes after he hosted Kim in the Russian Far East last year. U.S. and South Korean officials believe North Korea has sold Soviet-era artillery rockets and other military equipment to aid Russia in its war against Ukraine, which is now in its 27th month since the first year of the conflict. The sales reportedly include as many as 10,000 shipping containers holding nearly 5 million artillery shells. Both countries have denied the accusations, and in exchange, Russia is believed to have provided economic aid to North Korea, which obviously they're very much in need of. So there's that. 800-848-9222. We'll do 15 seconds of fame coming up in a minute. But first, let me say hello to Rick in Nashville. Hey there, Rick.
Hey, my friend. So I understand Vladimir Putin flew to North Korea at 2/3 the price. He showed up without luggage. No.
True.
Listen, I mean, I would never fly that airline. But listen, I wanted to comment quickly on the AI. And I understand it was a debacle for McDonald's. But think about this for a moment. Humans have been messing up orders since day one. I mean, you go to McDonald's, you order an ice cream cone, and they don't even give you a napkin. It's going to run off. So yet they're having to pay humans, $15 and $20 an hour for their messing up?
Yeah, $20. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe now AI has finally caught up to what humans are capable of doing, screwing up orders.
Right. So maybe we're the AI, and eventually the machines will hire us to mess things up because they know we'll do it.
You might be right, Rick.
Accuracy.
Thank you, Rick.
Keep, and I appreciate the topics.
Thank you, Rick. Nice of you to say. Great station we're on in Nashville, WUCT, which we're honored to be on. Thank you for the great support of the folks in Tennessee. Hey, why don't we give you an opportunity to chat for 15 seconds in a moment? 800-848-9222. Let's do that straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
When the lights go down and your dreams go wrong, in the darkness you might need a place to hide. If the days are long, when the sun goes down, you might need a place to call your own. Somewhere out there on the other side of midnight, you might hear a voice, a breeze in the brine. Somewhere out there on the other side of midnight, you might hear it in your dreams.
Stevie G at the Nosebleeds singing The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. We'll do 15 seconds of fame in just a moment. You know, I just heard that, and I want to apologize to you and to Noam Laden, that I yawned on air, which I am very embarrassed about. And it's no reflection on Noam at all. It is more a reflection of my crazy schedule. I had to, leave early yesterday, so my sleeping schedule was a bit disrupted, and so that's very rude. So I apologize to you and to Noam, and I will endeavor not to let that happen again. So that is really embarrassing. I'm sorry about that. All right. 800-848-9222 if you want to be heard for 15 seconds.
The Other Side of Midnight. This is 15 Seconds of Fame.
Sal.
Shake it, Jack.
Victor.
When Ocasio-Cortez was asked what MAGA means to her, she readily replied, "Well, since I'm an environmentalist, MAGA means to me, make Antarctica green again."
Bob.
From inmate to exoneree to pro bono wrongful conviction attorney, support Jeffrey Deskovic at DeskoviCFoundation.org, DeskoviCFoundation.org, DeskoviCFoundation.org.
Larry.
Frank, I discovered an even lower fare than Norm Layden did, where you automatically get arrested upon landing, whether you've done anything or not. And by the way, you don't have to look to the Virgin Mary. I cry tears of blood every time Norm Layden comes on.
Charles.
This 42-year-old bachelor never had a watch on him or a cell phone. He invites a friend of his to his house, and the friend looks around. There's no clock in the wall. He says, how do you tell what time it is? He goes, well, in the daytime, I ask a friend, and what do you do at night? You wake up in the middle of the night? What do? You want to know what time it is? He goes, for that, I have a ram's horn, a shofar, the one Jews blow on Rosh Hashanah, the high holidays. He goes, how does that tell you what time it is? He goes, I wake up in the middle of the night. I don't know what time it is. I open up the window. I blow my ram's horn. Somebody invariably screams, you idiot, it's 3:15 in the morning.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. Mike.
Morning, Frank. The weekend passed. Donald John in Detroit, in the hood with the brothers and sisters working the room. And then there's Tall Tale Joe. He's in Hollywood with the Hollyweird elite. Exit stage right, Mr. President. No, your other right. And lastly, Chuck E. Cheeseburger Schumer throwing patriotic American cheese on 50 Shades of Grey, uncooked meat. I'll have a hot dog, please.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Slams the lid on things for today. Until tomorrow, Frank Morano, good day.